Hey everybody, this is Craig Garber. Welcome to Everyone Loves Guitar, and we're going to show some love to the rhythm section today. I've got Gail Ann Dorsey, who is most well known for working with David Bowie, but I got to tell you, she's got some solo material out, and she's going to be releasing more of it, thankfully. And I don't want to put her on the spot. She has one of the most beautiful voices I have ever heard. I mean, honestly, it was just so moving listening to her solo stuff. Couple of quick messages. I want to thank Sterling Campbell, our mutual friend, for hooking us up. Thanks, Sterling. And make sure you go to everyonelovesguitar.com/subscribe to subscribe to the show. If you're listening to us on YouTube, hit the subscribe button, the little icon that looks like an emoji. That helps us out a lot with the Google recommendations. And thanks for your support. All righty, quick on Gail. Gail Ann Dorsey is a multi-instrumentalist, vocalist, songwriter, and recording artist who's well known as David Bowie's bass player. She held this spot from 1995 till David passed in 2016, touring and playing on 5 Bowie albums. She's also a successful session bassist. As a side person, she's played on or toured the world with a variety of artists like folk singer, activist Dar Williams, Seal, Joan Osborne, Gwen Stefani, The Gang of Four, Tears for Fears, The National, Olivia Newton-John, Joan Baez, Gwen Stefani, Nona Hendrix. Did you play with Ronnie Drayton?
No, I didn't. Yeah, I never got to. No, I never got to play Ronnie, but I knew Ronnie.
Yeah, I had him here on the show before he passed. It was.
Yeah, I saw him back in the day with her a long time ago, back in the early '80s.
Yeah, sweet guy.
Incredible.
Let me go on the list. Suzanne Vega, Ani DeFranco, Natalie Merchant, Donny Osmond, Boy George, Charlie Watts Big Band, the B-52s, the Indigo Girls, and loads of others. She's also listened to 3 solo records. As I said, I listened to her last record that was out called I Used to Be. It's just amazing. Some beautiful songs on there, great arrangements, and her voice is like an angel. And for the last 9 years, Gail's also been Lenny Kravitz bass player in his touring band. So you took Jack Daly's.
There was someone between Jack and me, Tony Bright.
Okay, yeah, I don't know.
Tony Bright is the actual original bass player on Are You Gonna Go My Way?
Oh, wow.
On that song, on that actual song. I'm not sure what else he played on that particular album, but that's his bass part on that. Yeah, Are You Gonna Go My Way? And Tony had, I think, some health issues and had to be replaced, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, my pleasure.
I'm so happy we talked so much. It's great to connect with you.
Yes, indeed.
You started playing acoustic guitar at age 9, and your older brother brought you an electric at 12. How'd you get interested in music, and did you come from a musical family?
Well, yes, I had 3 older brothers. The middle one was very much into music, and still is, actually, my middle brother. And and my sister, I think, played the violin for a while and the flute. But for the most part, the music in my family was just music that we listened to a lot of music. My mother was a radio freak, which I have adopted that from her. I always have most times a radio on. I should have more silence, I think, but there's something about the sound of the radio that's just so comforting. And my mother always had a radio playing. So I was listening to AM radio in the 60s, going to school, eating my breakfast and hearing Olivia Newton-John and all that, Neil Diamond and all the AMs, Carpenters and Fifth Dimension and Isley Brothers. And it was just such a mixture of music at the time. So I feel like it was a musical family in that sense. It's like everyone enjoyed music. And there was a lot of, because of my older siblings, there were a lot of records coming in and out of the house and different styles, and from Earth, Wind and Fire to like Cold Blood and like sort of the funky rock stuff. And then there was Stevie Wonder. And then there was, just so many different things, Bowie as well. No one else really stuck with music in terms of wanting to play an instrument, but I knew from the time I just can remember consciousness that I wanted to make music. I heard my middle brother had a reel-to-reel tape player, a very small reel-to-reel. And I don't know where he got it or how he got it, but it was like, to me, that was the most fascinating thing in the world, because I could I could sing on through the little microphone that was connected with a wire, you know, and play it back and hear it. And that was, I think I was about 5 years old or something. So that was when I got addicted to like hearing the sound of my voice and singing. I used to sing sitting on the dock of the bay, and I'd back over and over again, because that was probably the hit at the time or whatever. Yeah. And then, you know, my siblings, my brothers in particular, would, you know, bring things into the house, a pair of drumsticks or some, you know, God knows if they got them off the back of a truck or what, but, you know, every now and then they're like, and I know one of my first albums that I love, the Partridge Family, the very first Partridge Family album, definitely came off the back of a truck somewhere. My brother came home with this thing one night and was like, here's a record, you know, and that was, you know, I love that record. But, you know, there were, you know, congas around the house. My brother tried to play the upright bass for a while. So there was always things coming around, and they were offering things to me. And I just wanted to play anything I could get my hands on. But I really loved the guitar. I heard Jimi Hendrix, like Foxy Lady, and all this, like the Midnight Special, all those TV shows with rock bands on, T-Rex. And I just thought the guitar, like hearing a guitar solo, Eric Clapton, you know, Cream, was just like mesmerizing for me. Like the sound of the electric guitar and the acoustic as well, but mainly the electric at first, was so, to me, was like another voice. And I wanted to be able to speak with that voice, because to me, that voice spoke to me like louder than any human voice, than words could ever describe. And I was thought, wow, my God, to be able to play a guitar and make, and connect with somebody on that unspoken kind of emotional level. But it was just something I had to do. I had to learn how to speak that language. So that's all I talked about from the age of like 4 or 5. I wanted a guitar. And my godmother, who lived next door in this Philly row house.
Oh, you're from Philly? I thought you were from New York for some reason.
No, I'm Philly girl.
Okay.
West Philly.
Okay.
Will Smith neighborhood. Sister Sledge, they went to school with my brother, like that.
That's wild.
Some of the kind of Philly people. One of the keyboard player from Frankie Beverly and Mays used to live across the street. It's very exciting.
Yeah, that is exciting.
Ours, you know. So yeah, I just wanted to play a guitar. And then I used to go to my godmother's house and sit while she cooked in the kitchen, like for years, on a little ladder with her brooms, playing the guitar like a broom and making up songs or acting, or like just, you know, she sort of, for some reason, my godmother really entertained that part of me. Like she was comfortable I felt like she was really listening and playing along. You know, my mother, I think, was just too busy trying to be mother, you know, keep the house together. You know, she wasn't very playful in that sense. And I just begged and begged for a guitar. And finally, on my 9th birthday, my godmother hadn't come to wish me happy birthday. I was really sad. It was like time to go to bed. I can so remember in my little PJs going to bed and thinking, I can't believe Edith hasn't come to wish me happy birthday all day. Nothing, not a card, not, like, you know, I was heartbroken. And I remember the doorbell ringing late, like 10 o'clock at night. And I stuck my head down the stairs, and I saw the guitar coming through, like the front of the guitar coming through the door. And my godmother got me one of those, what are they called? K guitars with the little music note on it. The acoustic, it's like everybody's first guitar. I don't know where she found it, because we're in the hood, you know, it's like old black lady, like finding a guitar. She's like, where am I gonna find a freaking guitar? But she had been out all day because she had been searching to try to figure out how to get this guitar. And it took later, and then and so that was my first guitar, was from my godmother.
What a sweet woman.
Oh my gosh.
That's so cool.
I was thrilled. And then I just taught myself to play it. We didn't have money for lessons, and they did music lessons at school, but I took clarinet.
Wow. So you just listened to the radio and just learned how to pluck things out. I listened
to records, you know, Rufus and Shaka Khan, and the Cream, and, you know, attempt to play Queen. Of course, it's virtually impossible. Brian May. Anything, like anything I liked, I tried to figure it out. And the weird thing was, however I picked up the guitar, however she brought it to me, I was afraid to turn the tuning pegs. You know, didn't know what to do with it, and I didn't have anyone to tell me. So however it was tuned, I managed to somehow figure out how to play certain songs. And until I met a guy, I just think his birthday was just the other day, but he passed away a few years ago. My dear friend Jay Medley, he was a guitarist, amazing guitarist who gave me my first job as a bass player when I was 14. But until I met Jay, he taught me like how to tune the guitar. He taught me chords a little bit. He taught me the names of the strings, the notes and things.
Wow.
I had to like learn all over again after a few years of figuring out how to play between like 9 and 12 or whatever.
So your box patterns were like very unique to you.
They were weird. I mean, there was a lot of things I couldn't do, and now I realize why. But
yeah.
even if I could make something happen on 3 strings or whatever, like figure out a little riff that was on a, like Rufus and Shaka Khan were one of my favorite bands ever, and Tony Maiden is one of the best rhythm guitarists ever, who's very underrated, I think. But genius playing, you know, the little riffs and stuff. I just figure out how to do them, you know, on 2 or 3 strings, even though I couldn't get the full chord or whatever. And
That's
forget Joni Mitchell. I mean, who knew that all it was detuned anyway?
So funny.
But I was trying to learn those kind of songs as well. And then eventually I learned how to tune the guitar, and I wasn't afraid that if I turned the strings would pop or fall off or whatever. I didn't really know how everything worked, but I figured it out. I spent every waking hour, every spare minute, trying to learn how to speak on this instrument.
What made you switch to bass? And when, like, what happened?
That was looking for work, like looking for a job. It was an accident. Like a lot of bass players tell this story. I find that interesting, that most people don't grow up wanting to be a bass player. I never thought, I was like, the bass, it's not as cool as the guitar, you know, like the guitar is like the thing to be up front. Like Grand Funk Railroad was like my favorite band at the time, especially when I got my first electric. Mark Farner was like, I want to be able to like rock and blues out like Mark Farner.
I had him on here recently.
Yes. He is my first hero. I love him playing. He's amazing.
Really amazing. There's a few guys I've had on that I listened to for so long, and when I have them on, it's like I'm 12 again.
Exactly.
And I'm like, I can't believe it's really funny. Anyway, sorry about that. Yeah, but he's a great player. Yeah, he's incredible. So, you know, I just wanted to like, I guess I'm losing track of what I was going on, but, you know, I wanted to learn, I didn't want to learn bass, basically. I didn't really care much for it. But I went looking for a job, like a summer job. When I started to get kind of good on the guitar, I thought, well, maybe I can get some summer job that's not flipping burgers or working at a gas station or whatever. So it was 1976. I was about 14. And I answered an ad at the Sam Goody music store on Chestnut Street in Philly that no longer exists, of course. They had a bulletin board back in the day with 3x5 cards with people asking for bands or looking for whatever, piano lessons or whatever. So I would go and check the board, and the whole board was pretty much said, guitarist seeks bass player or keyboard player, sometimes drummer, but really a lot of bass, like nobody played freaking bass. It seemed like, it's like every week I'd go check, and they were always looking for a bass player. So I picked a card that had the same area code. You know how back in the day it was GR6 or SH7, like with the phone numbers? And I picked one that looked like in my neighborhood, and it said, bass player wanted for top 40 band, summer work, you know, work during the summer or whatever, playing birthday parties and whatever, you know, top 40 bands do. Rolling Stones, Led Zeppelin, whatever, top 40. I was like, okay, I'm going to go on this audition. I want to go on this audition because I had a little band with two boys across the street from me, Tony and Ricky. Tony played drums and Ricky played bass.
And we used to play Grand Funk songs. I used to make them play.
You were playing electric at that point.
I was playing electric.
Right. Okay.
I had a little Tiesco electric guitar. I didn't have a Strat until I was 20. That was what I always wanted, was a Strat. I love Strats. And they used to rehearse in my basement. My mother would let us rehearse in our basement. So they left their things there most times. The bass would be there, the drums would stay down. So I would go down when we weren't rehearsing, and I'd play a little bit of bass and play a little bit of drums, and, you know, sort of got a little comfortable on all of those things. So I wasn't completely like not able to play the bass, because I thought, well, this is easy. It's one note at a time. It's 4 strings. The guitar is a motherfucker of an instrument. It really is difficult. It still baffles me to this day. But so I knew I could play the bass, and I thought it can't be that difficult if I do that. So I asked my mother, I said, look, I need to go on this audition for this job. If I get the job, could you find a way to buy me a bass? Because, you know, we were living on Social Security. If I needed extra things, my mom would go and help somebody cater or clean a house, or, you know, just something for extra money. So she said, okay, yeah, if you get the job, I'll get you a bass.
Which is pretty cool in hindsight, when you say all the stuff
my mom was very supportive. She didn't understand,
really cool.
But she was supportive. It was weird. It was almost like my mother was born in Virginia in 1921. I mean,
oh my God.
She must have lived through. So for a little Black girl like me, her little different daughter, asking for guitars and movie cameras and things, was like way above her concept of what the hell I was ever thinking. Why wasn't I just playing with the other kids and having a boyfriend or whatever? So, no, seriously, you know,
I totally get it.
Very antisocial. I didn't have a lot. I had a few close friends, but I never wanted to play with it. I just wanted to play music with people, but I didn't care about any other activities. So it was odd, you know. I wasn't like my sister, you know, or whatever. This wasn't the thing. So her one side of her brain was like, what the fuck? And the other side was, I can see something in my daughter that makes her happy, that's promising, and I'm going to help her. And
which makes her even more cool, to be honest with you.
I have to say, she never missed a gig. Up until she was almost 90 years old. She went to every single gig I ever did in Philadelphia, from the tiniest little shithole to seeing me with Bowie and Gwen Stefani. Like, you know, she was 86 when I was playing with Gwen Stefani or whatever, and she's like in the middle of the audience, standing up with the little kids, you know.
That's so cool.
So you know, she was proud. Of what I could achieve. Yeah. So then, you know, I went on this. I asked my older sister's best friend's boyfriend, who I knew played bass. He had a Rickenbacker, and I said, "Can I borrow your Rick to take this audition?" And he said yes. And then my mother said, you can't go to a stranger's house without somebody with you. You're 14 years old. So I took my sister's best friend, and we went and knocked on the door, and opened the door was my friend who I was talking about before, who passed away, Jay Medley. And Jay opened the door, and he first thought that my sister's best friend was this sexy, half Black, half Japanese. You know, she was if I was 14, she was like, you know, 20 or something, you know, like, and he thought that was the person answering.
We got our bass player.
Like, he was like, whoa. And then little me, you know.
Oh my God.
And then I plugged in the bass, and he was like, oh shit.
Oh my God. This is like literally one of the best stories I've heard.
It was funny. It was
so
funny.
Awesome.
And so I went and I played, I remember playing Elvin Bishop. I think I learned Fooled Around and Fell in Love.
Yeah.
Fooled Around, and
great
I could
song.
play that, sing it, and we did Boston, More Than a Feeling. All those songs were in the top 40 at the time. And I got the job.
Wow.
And I've been friends with Jay ever since, until, like I said, he passed away just a few years ago. He had a heart attack.
Wow.
He was only 4 years older than he was 18 years old at the time.
Oh my God.
We became like family from that day forth. And he taught me so much. He and his brothers, he was the oldest. He had 2 twin brothers and then a little brother. they all played music. And I used to be kind of envious or jealous because both his parents were alive and his father was really into them learning their instruments. So they were studying with like the best teachers in Philly.
Right.
And I was like jealous because like we couldn't afford that. And
Sure.
I still don't know how to read music, really. But he could read and play, and he could do all the fast solos. And he taught me like little things, a little bit at a time, more on the guitar, on the bass. He was a great teacher and a great friend. I really, really miss him. I'm going to make a tribute to him soon. I haven't done it yet, but I've been finding some old photographs and things of us when I used to sneak in the clubs with him. I was too young to play a lot of the things that we were supposed to do. So when we had gigs that were in a place that sold alcohol or whatever, the owners would say, look, you get up and you do your set. And as soon as you finish your set, she goes in the back, because if the cops walk in here and see me on stage at 15 or 14, they lose their license. So I used to do that. I used to play some of the bars in Philly with Jay and the guys, because I was little, but I could play. My mother bought me an Epiphone. She bought me an Epiphone bass.
She did. Do you still have that?
I don't. I have photos of me with it. And it breaks my heart that when I went to film school, I kind of gave it away. I had all these cool things that in the end, between like sort of 15 and 18, I just kind of like, shifted gears. And I wasn't thinking about the value of something. Years later, I'd be like, oh, I'll get another bass, or oh, well, now I'm doing this, or, I just kind of was a kid who was just like doing everything, so I didn't even think about holding on to any of those things. I wish I had, especially wish I'd held on to that bass, but I didn't. I gave it to somebody.
How did you learn? Where were you were practicing these songs for the audition on Anthony or Tony or Ricky's bass down in the basement? Is that like what you practiced?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
It was.
So you're pretty industrious.
I can be when I need to. I remember my first drum kit when I made a drum kit out of an old vinyl hassock, those things you put your feet on in this footstool.
Oh yeah.
There's a few different names for them. We used to call them a hassock.
It's like got beans in it or something.
It's like a round thing you rest your feet on, and you sit lazy boy or whatever, and then you put your, like everybody had these things. It was like made out of vinyl.
Yes, I know exactly.
It was like this high off the ground, like sort of 16 inches off the ground or whatever. And it was a foot's rest, basically. And to me, that was like my kick drum, because when you hit it with the sticks that my brother had brought home from somewhere, I was like, I gotta make a drum kit. So I would hit it with the stick, and the kick, the hassock sounded like a kick drum. Sure. And then I took a folding chair and I put an old metal. My father used to work at Bud Steel. He used to work at a steel factory. He had like the steel ashtray or something, and that was kind of like a snare drum. So it's like boom, like you hit the couldn't do it with my feet, but I used to do it with both hands. And then I took an old music stand, the old folding ones that you stick the thing in, and I put a nail in a Planters peanut can. I can still remember this so clearly, and put that through the thing, and that was the cymbal. So I'd sort of go between the cymbal and and I'd play like. And I would play Grand Funk stuff. I don't know. I really loved that stuff. Inside Looking Out and foot stomping music and all that stuff. So I was kind of making up anything I could to sort of play music until I could get the actual instruments. And I did get a drum kit too in the end. My brother got me one.
That's really cool. Yeah. Great story about you getting your first gig. Really cool.
So bass was, that's how I got into bass. And then I just did it for that work, and then I kind of didn't do it for a while, and then I rediscovered it, especially when I got to London. That's when I rediscovered the bass, and it just became like, wow, like an epiphany, like, oh my God, this is what it's meant to be. I get it.
If Wikipedia is accurate, and I don't know if it is, it said that you attended School of Film and Video at California Institute of the Arts on a full scholarship based on your screenplays and Super 8 films, but you left after 3 semesters because this is what this said, quote, you felt unsuited for the film industry and turned to a career in music.
Yep.
I thought that at the age of 22, that was a huge decision, and I give you a lot of credit.
It was even before that, because I was, because my birthday's in November, I was 17 when I went to school. I turned 18, I think, in that November of the first semester of school. So I was quite young.
You Scorpio?
I was Scorpio.
Yeah, me too.
I just had, yeah, you said I just had my birthday on the 20th. So I'm just I'm almost Sagittarius. And I was the only female in my film class as well at the time. Now that would be so different. But in 1980, I was the only woman in my freshman class. And
in California?
Yeah, Cal Arts. It was really horrific. It was so sexist, that industry at that time.
Wow.
I had a horrible experience, unfortunately, with the energy, the male energy of that whole thing of filmmaking and the sort of, I found the guys, nothing against them personally, but I think like most of them were very, it's such a cutthroat kind of business. It seemed like there was all this, they would do anything to get their film made. They would lie, cheat, steal, like to get, and it was like, I don't have that in me. As a person, I don't have that sort of, I don't know if I had the balls or whatever it was, or the drive. I don't know what it was they had, but they would do anything to get their film made. And you kind of have to, because it's this long process that I didn't think about when I was writing my screenplays in high school. I loved writing. And I've always enjoyed like writing and reading. I'm terrible with math and numbers and science. I can't deal with it at all. But words I love. And so I had written all these things, and I, you dream as a kid, and I'm going to get, that my screenplays was obviously good enough to get me a scholarship to school, which was exciting. But then I realized it's like, there's a million screenplays out there, and screenwriters particularly, I think, it's really, I didn't realize how hard, I realized for myself, put it this way, that I needed more feedback creatively or just emotionally or artistically than you get as a screenwriter. You spend a lot of time alone, you write a screenplay, and then it could be 10 years before you get it made, or 6 years before you get it, and then you try and write another one, and and it's this kind of isolated thing. You don't get any playback, you don't get a reward, I guess. And
well, you don't get that connection. You write a piece of music, you can go out to, at least back then, you can go to a gig tomorrow night and play it.
Well, that's what I was noticing. Like when I went to school, I didn't even have a guitar. I was like, okay, I'm going to be a filmmaker now. And then eventually, maybe I'll just play music for fun. But I really want to make movies. And I got there, and after like a few weeks, there was like this place called Mom's Cafe. I don't know if it's still there at Cal Arts. And that's like people used to hang out there and play music, and somebody would bring their Fender Rhodes down, and like, so I was like, God, I'm dying for a guitar, So I went to the Saugus swap meet, and I bought like a $30 guitar for like this Mexican stand, like a nylon string guitar. And then I started in my room playing, and then I would go to the music school, and I'd be like, hey, you guys jamming? And so I suddenly realized I was getting that thing that I had missed. And then like writing class and film school, and like the classes and there was all these men who were macho, and they didn't want to hire me to work on the crew. And then I'd go to the dean, and I'd be crying because no one would include me in things, because they were like, oh, you're a girl or whatever. It was just this energy that I wasn't used to. And it was really freaked me out. And I was like, I don't think I can survive in this business the way it is. Now I think I might have a bit better chance, but certainly then it was really hard. So
I'm shocked that
so I got out of the film industry. It was a little bit, yeah. And a couple of the guys, even though it was the freshman class, some of them had already they'd already worked in the business. There was like a guy from Brazil who had worked on a TV station in Brazil. He was 24 already, like things like that. So they were kind of older, and I was kind of this kid with no experience. And they were all like, filmmakers they have a lot of ego, right. I think. They did. I mean, those guys were like little Francis Ford Coppolas. You know what I mean? Like they were like that.
In their mind, anyway.
In their mind, they were like, yeah, that's what I mean. That's what I mean.
Yeah. Okay.
So you got got this like thing, and I was just like, it was overwhelming for little me who had never been away from home. I'd never been on a plane. I suddenly went from Philly to Los Angeles, or north of Los Angeles. And it was like this whole new world and all these people, and they were grown. And it was, I started smoking when I was 19.
Cigarettes?
Yeah.
Do you still smoke?
No, I smoked for 20 years though.
Yeah.
Long time. I quit almost 15 years ago now.
Oh, congratulations. That's great.
Long time. But I smoked too long.
Don't realize how beneficial it is until you stop.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
No kidding. I'm so happy to not have any thought of that whatsoever. But yeah, it was hard, the film thing.
But still, I give you a lot of credit for just saying, hey, I mean, that took a lot of courage. It's one thing to say, I don't like this. It's another thing to say, this is for me and I'm done. Honestly, at that age. I was scared. I was scared to tell my mom, and I was like, I'm going to drop out of school, and what am I going to do now? Well, I'm going to play music, but how is that going to work? So I went to, there was a friend of mine that I met at school. I noticed one of the questions you had asked me before that we written questions was what was one of the best decisions I'd ever made or something in my life. Yeah. And I think it was to go to that school, to choose Cal Arts, because there I met some people that are still to this day in my life and have been very pivotal in terms of where I ended up and how things worked out for me. Like extremely important that I went there to meet those people. And I wouldn't have met them anywhere else, I don't think. Isn't that funny? That your real reason for going there had nothing to do with film.
No.
It's so cool to hear that.
It really was mostly important was that it was going to get me to England at some point. And that's where I met my friend who took me to, he left school with me at the same time. I had a friend who was British. His name was Pete. He was from London. He was at the school. He was a freshman in the design school. Cal Arts has 5 different art schools: theater, dance, music, art and design, and the film school, which was broken into 2 sections: live action, which is my section, and animation, because Walt Disney started that school. He founded and he founded the school that was only for animators, and Walt Disney were going to train animators at this school, and then they go right off and work to Disney, and most of them did who were there, but it expanded into the other departments. So it was this school that was about art. You took these kind of critical courses or something they called, so you could get a BFA, but there was no math and there was no science. It was art 24/7. It was awesome.
I'm amazed at your memory.
And you could, well.
You remember the 5 sections. I don't remember what I had for breakfast. I mean,
that school was very special, though. It still is. And over the years, what's really cool is that I've met a bunch of alumni from the music school who have been in other bands, like the trombonist from Gwen Stefani's band from No Doubt. He's the graduate from 95. Like all these. I've been meeting all these people who went there. I've been taking a course with a guy. I'm learning like how to use film scores, the stuff on the computer, and I'm doing lessons with a guy who turned out to be a Cal Arts. So I'm learning all these people from now. I'm like old school now, but they're like the young kids now from there. They know all the digital shit.
Yes.
We didn't have all that. It was film with white gloves on when I was doing it. You're cutting that stuff up. But anyway. So yeah, I just kind of met Pete there, and we left together. He was a piano player as a kid. He studied classical piano, British guy. And then there I was with my guitar, and even though we were in different schools, art and design, film school, we started playing music together. We tried to have a band together. We were like, let's be like the Eurythmics. I'll be like Annie, he's playing keyboard and whatever. So we left school at the same time and went to New York. And then after a while, he was like, well, I can't stay in New York because I don't have a student visa anymore. I'm going to go back to London. And I was working at record stores in New York. That's the only other job I've had.
Where were you working?
So I worked first at a place called the Record Factory on 8th Street, right across from McDougal, where Capezio Shoes used to be.
Capezio Shoes. I know exactly where that is. I know.
And right across that T there, because it's like a T junction, right across the street was a place called the Record Factory. It had 2 floors. It was nothing but vinyl.
I remember all those stores, man.
that was my first job there. I worked in the record factory, and then they kind of closed down because of Tower. Tower Records started coming up on the one on Broadway.
On Broadway and West
Fourth or whatever.
Yeah, West Fourth. Yeah.
That was like becoming. Everybody's like, "There's this new thing. It's coming." I remember my boss. I forgot his name now, but he was like, everybody was sick. Everybody who had a little record store was like panicked, as well they should have been. Yeah. And then I kind of got let go from there because they ended up closing down. And then I went and worked at Sam Goody on 51st and 6th Avenue, which is now
totally different.
PBS or something. Yeah, it was right across from Radio City. Yeah. And I used to look out the window at the till. I used to work the cash register and put the albums out. The CDs came, put the CDs. But I could see Radio City out the window all day.
That's cool.
I used to sit there at the till going, one day I'm going to play a Radio City. One day, and the first time I ever did was with Gang of Four in 1992.
That's so cool.
And I just was like, I can't believe it. I made it. I did it.
That is so cool.
So that was my first job in New York. And I went there with Pete, and I'd worked for a while. And then he was like, I got to go back to London. I don't want to be here illegally, blah, blah, blah. So I said, I got nothing really. We've been writing a few songs. Maybe I can go with you. And I had met his mom, had been to visit. He had a really cool London family, like they were very cool, like hip, like hip European family. Right. Everybody swears at the table and smokes. You know what I mean? It was like, they were like, your mom was like your best friend. It was like, I'm not used to this, but it's cool.
Yeah.
What? So it was like kind of hippie London family. And so they were like, yeah, bring her over, and I went over to stay with the family for a while. And then I was like, this is just like, I took some songs, like stuff started happening that I couldn't get going in New York, no matter how hard I tried.
Isn't that amazing?
So, and to this day, Pete is like my brother, like family. Like I still know him well. I know his wife. We've been through everything together for the last 40 some years.
That is so nice. That's such a great story.
Yeah.
I'm just so impressed with your courage to leave school and say, yeah, let's go to New York. I mean, I think it takes a certain level of self-confidence to do that.
You know what's funny? I had that. I was determined, I did, because the alternative to me, and it almost still is, especially coming back to me with this year of COVID and suddenly not being able to work and like do something I've done every day, like for the last 30 years, or whatever. I suddenly realized, like, if I don't do that, I know that I would end up, if I hadn't been brave, if I hadn't given up things or sacrificed something or just went for it when I was terrified, didn't know what I was walking into, if I hadn't done it, the alternative is that I wouldn't be speaking to you today. And I just knew that. I knew that since I was little. I would be a drug addict, I would be dead, I would be something, but I wouldn't have done what I've done. And I knew that it was necessary for me to live that life. Otherwise, this life was not for me. I really just knew that. You know what I mean? Like I
do know exactly
how
what you
I
mean.
could survive any other way. And now, this year I suddenly worked, like, I'm like, wow, I have to, if I don't do this, I don't know what's going to, something has to give, Luckily we have internet, we have things we can make do, but it's like, like I was saying, I'm doing something with Jerry Leonard next week, and it'll be the first time I'm in a room with, 5 people hearing a drum kit next to me or what. And I'm like, I'm chomping at the bit, as they say, like, oh my God, I can't wait. Like, I just need that so bad. Otherwise I'm going to go crazy.
Yeah.
So at the time, I think it was the same feeling. I just knew that I had to do this and I had to do whatever it took. And anytime there was an opportunity, I never turned it down, no matter how hard, no matter whether I really, like if somebody asked me to come and, I was broke or whatever, but I need some money. And someone said, oh, come and do a vocal for me in my basement. And they're full of cats and I'm allergic to cats and I'm down there sneezing for $50. Like, I didn't care. It was an experience. You know what I mean?
I totally know it.
Turned away those experiences. And I never felt entitled to anything I had, especially because there was a level of confidence that for a while, I think I lost it. in the middle of all, like, I feel like I'm getting it back now, only in the last like 10 years, to be honest, that I feel like I can even say that I'm really good at what I do and stuff. There was always a doubt of that came somewhere. I think the more I started to work with famous people, the more I felt smaller in a way, even though I was still doing great job for these famous people. It's like I didn't feel like I was performing badly, but it was kind of, sometimes I felt like when I turned back to my own music or to what I'm doing or what I hear in my head that I want to do, and then I just go, oh, but you know, it's not as good as that Bowie song, or it's not as good as, like, am I, you know, who cares what I do? You know, like I would second guess myself. And I still, some days on a bad day, I can wake up and just go, what am I doing? Who gives a shit what I'm, you know, there's so much music out there, and I don't do my vocal warm-ups, and I did, you know, there's always something that I beat myself up.
Yeah.
But I really, at the time I was very like, I was fearless in terms of like, I just have to have experience. I just want to get out there and do whatever anybody asks me to do.
But that's the blessing of growing up with no money, to be honest with you, because I was the same way when I was a kid. I would work, and I think the minimum wage when I started working was $1.90 an hour.
Woo!
And let me tell you, man, anytime I had a chance to work overtime, because I would take the summers, I was 14 and I was a foot messenger. So this is before they had faxing. So I would go to this dispatch place, pick up a parcel, take it. Hey, take this down to the World Trade Center, take this to the architect firm on 68th Street. And you know what I would do? They would give you bus money, or so I would walk, because I'm like, man, this is 30 cents or whatever.
Yeah.
But that's the blessing actually of growing up with no money, because it's like, if you get an opportunity to get some, it's like, I'm all in, you know?
Yeah. You
so
get focused.
I get that.
You know, and I have to say, you know, I've done well most of my life, and I, you know, all I did was spoil my mother in the end as much as I could, you know, when before she passed away and stuff. But yeah, it's, you know, you have a different view of the world when you're watching the pennies.
Yeah, totally.
There's no question about it.
All right, so you go to Pete. You go to London. Was he in London?
He was in, he was from London. He's actually in California right now. He still goes, he always loved California. That's why he was in school out there. He used to play tennis when he was a kid. He was like out there with his family as a young junior tennis something or other. So he's one of those Brits who likes the sun in California. There's some who like, well, you're in Miami, right? Or
no, we're in Tampa. I'm in Tampa. But there's tons of Brits like on South Florida. I mean, like probably the most populated place.
Is that right? Yeah. I don't know much about Florida, but I know there's what I've come across in my travels is like, especially with artists, is that there's the Brits who love the New York thing, and then there's the Brits who love LA.
Yeah.
And they, you know, like the Roland Orzabal, for example, from Tears for Fears, he was like an LA guy. You got to rent the house in LA, and it's all about sunshine and convertibles and stuff. And then you have Bowie, who's total New York. Lou Reed, theater, cold jacket, you know, this street grit, you know, vibe. So it's funny, it's different things. But Pete was always a sun guy. He liked to have his flip-flops on. So
you're living with his family out there, and you start getting gigs, or you start when you say work started coming to you, what kind of work?
Yeah, well, I started meeting people, and they'd be like, oh, you play the bass, all right, we're doing this gig down the pub.
Rocking your English accent there.
Like, well, I had a strong one when I came back here. It's funny. And because I didn't spend much time back in the States once I decided to stay there or try and stay there. I got invited, you know, I met people, somebody said, oh, I got a recording studio. I know somebody with a recording studio. Oh, let me do a demo. Oh, you know, just got to do demos in a real recording studio. Like, it was things I had never had a chance to do in New York. I was still on my 4-track, you know. And then there was like these jazz gigs, which was funny because I'm not a jazz, I really don't know enough theory or whatever to play jazz. But like everything I play on the bass or any instrument, I play it by ear. So like I just pick it up and figure out the patterns, and, you know, I can feel it. If I can sing it, I can play it.
Right.
It's kind of like in my head, I'm singing it and I'm like, okay. And then I figure out where those notes are. And like something about my brain has learned the intervals of the singing, like where they fall on especially on the bass. So I met these people who had like these jazz gigs at the pub, you know, on a Sunday. And I started to go down and play with them, play bass with them. It was a keyboard player and a sax player and me playing bass. So there was no drums.
That's wild.
We had a little trio.
So you're the whole rhythm section. That's tough.
Yeah. And so there I was learning walking bass. And then I started singing at the same time. We were doing A Train and what was another song I used to do with a walking bass and sing. We did A Train and a version of, we did like a sort of bossa nova version of Carole King, Natural Woman, and, you know, sort of things like that. And then some standards so I started getting into jazz, which I love, you know. And Pete was into jazz. He had already kind of introduced me to Miles and a bunch of reggae and things that I hadn't really listened to very much. And then I became a Mingus fanatic when I heard Joni Mitchell's album. So I knew my Mingus.
Right.
But I didn't know Ron Carter and all these other bass players. I started to learn that when I played with this trio. And so they had regular work. So it was the first time I had a job that was not an extra, you know, I had enough money every week playing in the pub to survive, to, you know, get my food and everything. I didn't have an apartment or anything yet. And then I found a place with cheap rent and moved in a house with a bunch of women and, you know, like trying to, you know, how you do back in the day.
Yeah. Right.
Putting the pennies in the heater. You know,
Yeah.
50 pence pieces. And, you know, sort of England was pretty rustic back in the day.
Definitely.
It's very she now, but, you know, we were roughing it a little bit back in the day.
And so what happened from there? Tell me that. Keep telling, take me through your journey. This is such a cool thing to hear.
So I met these women and then, I was playing, you know, then through those people, you meet someone else. I don't even remember how I'm trying to think. I don't remember how I met John Stevens now. John Stevens was a jazz drummer, a famous, like, avant-garde jazz drummer. He was from, I want to say Ireland. But he was pretty much a London guy, I guess. He was Charlie Watts' one of his buddies. He was they grew up together or something. He knew Charlie Watts because they loved jazz. I never knew Charlie Watts like jazz. I knew nothing about Charlie Watts. I just, you know, knew the Rolling Stones.
Sure. Mind you, I just got to say, he's been one of my favorite drummers my whole life.
Oh, he's incredible.
His time, oh my God, he's like a Swiss watch, man. I mean,
no, he's good. Charlie's the shit.
Yeah,
and he's
really
a nice
is.
guy. And he's a really, really nice guy. He is awesome. Just chill. Just eat like whatever, you know. He just loved playing jazz and listen. He was an aficionado on jazz. He knew everything about big band jazz and whatnot. Somehow, I don't remember who introduced me, but I met John Stevens in that kind of jazz world. I think I went for a job. There was a community center. I think I went looking for a job in music. I don't remember how. Maybe I have it in a journal somewhere. I really don't remember the details of how to connect these now. But I ended up going for a job that was a government funded job. There were a lot of things in London at the time, as well as pub gigs, where even though it was the Thatcher years when Margaret Thatcher had just come in and she was cutting all the things and you know how they do, there was still like the Greater London Council, I think it was called the GLC, and something else. There were these government programs that funded art. If you had a project, you could go to the government and get money to do your projects.
Wow, and that's a foreign animal.
Yeah, and I got involved in some of those. So I was involved in one was called the Tony Haynes Big Band. This guy had been getting money to do his big band for years, and he makes records and tours around the UK. And it was this huge band with people from Africa and Peru, and it was like this mixture of stuff. I used to sing in this band, by the way.
And play bass or just sing?
No, just sing.
Really?
And
wow.
Through that band, I think was maybe when I met, I think a few of the, what came to be known as some of the big, more well-known British jazz players who were around at that time in the early 80s. One comes to mind, especially is Courtney Pine. Courtney Pine was like the jazz saxophone prodigy, of the UK during that time. And Courtney was, I think he had played with this Tony, like a lot of people had been through this Tony Haynes band because he had this funding, and it could be rotated. Everybody could read music, so it could be anybody coming in, but there was a core group of people who always played with him and sang with him. And through the, and so I got into that somehow. I don't remember how, but I got into Tony Haynes. And through that, you meet another person who knows some, it's just like people were all over the place making music,
Yeah.
And Tony Haynes and the Grand Union Orchestra, it was called. Grand Union Orchestra. Somewhere I have a cassette of a recording we did. And so through like that, I went to for this other job with what was called the London Jazz Center. And what that was something that was run by this guy named John Stevens, this drummer that I met. John was starting a community center. Well, he started a group of musicians who went around to community centers in London. And it was a paid job. It was like a government job, like, paycheck with taxes and stuff kind of job. And and Courtney Pine worked, I think, for that for a little while too. Different artists who, Steve Williamson was another one of those young black sort of British jazz guys.
Was it weird for them that you were in America? I mean, I don't think they probably had a lot of Americans in their band. Like I went over to London in like 90, not London, my wife's from this little town. And I walked, my mother-in-law needed something at the electronics store. I said, hey, let me go. Cause I'm in this house and like, I'm dying out. I mean, I'm here. I'm like, I'm not sitting in your house in the middle of nowhere. And so I remember walking into the, it's like a Ace Hardware, something like that. And I go in there and I'm start talking. I said, do you have this cord, a plug or something? And this woman's like, oh my God. I'm like, are you okay? She goes, I love your accent. I'm like, I was laughing. So I'm like, so I wouldn't think there was a lot of Americans living there like you were.
And there was, funny enough, there were a bunch of Cal Arts people who followed me, who are one of them who's still there to this day, who ended up being the bass player in my band when I did the tour for my first solo album for Corporate World. Dave Clark, he's still in London to this day. He was in school with me at Cal.
So there were.
That's what I mean. There was a real, there's a little core of us that stayed together and moved around Europe and all kinds of things. So that school was really important that I chose that particular school. And there's a story behind choosing that school too that's quite bizarre. But anyway, so I met John Stevens and I got the job at the Jazz Center. And basically you would take an instrument, your bass, whatever you play, and John had a group of musicians who would go around to community centers, and we would teach something that he called the rhythm tree. The rhythm tree is basically learning rhythm, like making music through rhythm. So people from the community would come, as many as you want. Sometimes you can have 20 people, 30 people from the community. And we would have boxes of tambourines, or if you had a guitar, whatever, or any instrument, you might play trumpet, anything, bring it. So you have this mixture of instruments from God knows what, from shakers to somebody with an auto harp, it could be anything, a flute. And basically what he was going to try, what he used to do is make like this weird symphonic, this orchestra of like cacophony. It was just like based on rhythm. So he would teach things like the rhythm tree is like learning rhythms against each other, like 2 against 3.
Okay.
1, 2, 1, like that kind of thing. So he would build up. So he would give people, you try and get a group of people to be a particular beat, and on their beat, they just do whatever on their instrument. It doesn't have to be the right note. It just could be a noise. So you would have this weird kind of strange rhythmic sounds, like soundscape that's happening on these weird rhythms, and you would build them up and build them up. So that was what we used to do. And I was one of the musicians who helped to organize.
Yeah, but what a great gig.
Oh, it was a wonderful gig.
Oh my God. And how cool is that people would come out? I mean, that doesn't exist now,
That's what I mean. I know. Just the resources for that alone.
Yeah.
So that was one of my starting jobs. And through John Stevens then he was the link to the professional world, like the commercial world. Meeting John Stevens first was getting me to sing with the Charlie Watts Big Band, because he was Charlie's best friend, or one of Charlie's best friends. And Charlie asked him to help him put together a big band. So John's job was to put together what became the first version anyway of the Charlie Watts Big Band. I think they did different versions later on. And John said to Charlie, you got 30 people on stage at Ronnie Scott's, which is a tiny
little place.
So we almost took up the whole club just getting the band in there, let alone people squeezed in. So we had a week. The first job was a week at Ronnie Scott's, and then we went to Brighton and to some other parts of the UK and did like a show, like part of the one of the jazz festivals. I can't remember which town it was in now. Anyway,
you had to feel pretty good about yourself when you're sitting there in Ronnie Scott's being the singer for Charlie Watts Big Band.
That was my first professional job, like real professional job. And after that was the first time I took that paycheck. It was like £1,500 or something. It was a lot of money.
Yeah.
And I went to the travel agents in Brixton where I lived, and I bought my first ticket to Paris. My dream was always to go to Paris. I wanted to go to France so bad. I think I'm French from another life. I really do. I've always loved France. Always loved France. So I took the hovercraft, the train.
Oh, wow.
Which made me very sick because I don't like boats or anything. And the train to Calais, and got to Gare du Nord and spent my first weekend in Paris on my own, or like a week. I think I booked one of those package deals with a bed,
right.
like the bathroom outside the room, kind of like old school.
Yeah.
And wandered around Paris for a week with a Walkman, like a cassette Walkman.
That's so cool.
But anyway, that gig bought me my first trip to Paris. And but John got me that gig because he said to Charlie, look, we have 30 musicians, we got 5 baritones, we got trombones, he's like, no one's gonna want to hear people soloing all freaking night long. You gotta have if you have a big band, you gotta have singers.
Yeah.
So he hired me as the singer. There was another woman he hired as well, and I would do 3 songs, and she would do 3 songs with us just to break up the night. So I would sit on the piano stool, wait for my number to come up, and it was so exciting. And that gig, I think, funny enough, David Bowie came to that gig because I remember him at the table. Like I had to go down front and sing my number. And the tables were literally right next to, I'm like right at somebody's table,
right,
just to squeeze in there and get my song on and go off. But Bowie came, all the Stones came. I remember Gil Scott-Heron trying to pick me up.
Are you serious?
No, I'm serious.
Let me tell you, that guy is one of my favorite. He was like rap before. Man, did you see the documentary that they ran?
I have not yet.
It's so good.
I want to see that.
And his band.
My favorite.
His band. Oh my God.
No, that would kill it. He's one of my all-time favorites.
Amazing, man. Such a talented dude, and his band was just so tight.
Brian Jackson and the Midnight Band, or whatever.
Who was his bass player? His bass player was
I don't remember the name. Yeah, I don't remember the name.
I tried to get him.
I know Brian Jackson was the guy who did a lot of his music. I don't know what Brian Jackson played, because I remember Gil Scott-Heron with Brian Jackson and the Midnight Band, it was called. Some of the older albums. Yeah, my sister had a huge crush on him. That's all I could think about when he was trying to pick me up.
So that's so funny. So he's in London trying to hit on you. That is so funny. Oh my!
At the time, I remember that. That was one of those evenings. Chrissy Hine came. I mean, every star came to see Charlie's big band. So it was pretty exciting. I think I asked Bowie if he remembered seeing me sing there, and he said he did, but I don't know if he did.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that. Do you think he made a mental note? Because a lot of times people get gigs like that. So-and-so, Mark Knopfler met his bass player, Glenn Worf. He came to see somebody play in Nashville. 2 years later, he gets a call from Knopfler's manager. Yeah.
Well, that's how Bowie, he did make a mental note. And I don't think it was from Charlie Watts, but he said that he saw me on TV in the late 80s with my first solo album when I did Corporate World. I was on Warner Brothers and I had all the bells and whistles, you know,
Right.
It's 88. It's like all they, you know, I was on all the TV shows from all the way from Ireland, Scotland, UK, everywhere. I was just promoting like crazy all over Europe. And he said he saw me on TV. He was in a hotel or something in London and he was flipping channels. And I came on and he said, you sang a song and then you went and talked on the couch or whatever, and then you did another song. And he said, and I made a note, when the time is right, when the project is right, I'd love to work with that woman.
And then 7 years later.
7 years later it took. He called me in 95.
Did you say, why'd you wait so long?
Knowing him now, I know that he did make a mental note, and he never, you think my memory's good. This guy who did way more drugs than I could ever dream of, remembered everything, like down to the last wire, like even can remember some, you know, like every novel he's ever read and everything. His mind was beyond, it was unbelievable. I've never met anybody so smart. Maybe one other person. But so yeah, that's how I got the Bowie job. You know, but he waited for the project that was right. He was like, now is the time that I want to call that woman. It was like, what?
Hey, nice to be Charlie Watts, to not have to worry about making any money, where you could afford 30 people on your band. Because I hear these stories once in a while. You got to have like Charlie Watts money or someone else. I forgot who it was. Sure. You can't
put a big guarantee or like a hit or like something that you know that you're going to go out and do. He didn't give a shit. And he had two other. John Stevens was playing drums and another drummer. It was 3 drummers. Charlie was on the top like a pedestal, like a pyramid. It was like one Charlie up at the top, and then John here and somebody here, and then there was like these tiers of musicians, and I would look up at Charlie and he would just be smart. You never see him grinning.
No,
like in the Rolling Stones, you know.
No,
he was smiling
stoic,
from ear to ear and
really
swinging like a mofo. He was like,
that's awesome.
He was Gene Krupa or whatever. He was like whatever, you know. He was his own version of Buddy Rich. He was up there swinging, and
that's so cool.
Wonderful time. So, and when I did speak with him, he just loved jazz. He was like, I love jazz. This is what I always wanted to do. He said, I never thought I'd be in a band like the Rolling Stones. Like, you know, I thought I'd be playing bebop, but you know. So here's his chance.
Poor guy.
Yes. Yeah, right.
I feel for him.
Okay. I think he's okay with this choice. He could have made another choice, but he gets the best of both worlds.
Figured out how to work it out somehow. Yeah, right.
And he's very humble. I love that about him. He was real low key and takes the train, and you know, not a big fuss around him.
That's really cool.
Yeah. That's great.
Okay, so let me talk about your first record. So Clapton played on your first record, correct?
Mm-hmm. That's because of Nathan East, who is it today? Is today the 8th? Yes, today is Nathan East's birthday.
Right on. Well, happy birthday, Nathan.
I need to send him a text.
So he produced it.
He produced it, and at the time, in fact, he's about to do some more gigs with Eric Clapton. I just saw announced next month or next year or whatever. Nathan East was sitting in my A&R man's office at WEA Records. I had got my deal with Warner Brothers, and I went in to see my A&R guy, Colin Barlow, and trying to decide on a producer. And I didn't have anybody in particular in mind. I mean, I knew records that I liked, but a lot of them were with very, very big producers. And I thought, no, I don't know if I want to go with somebody so massive, because I'm not there yet, kind of thing. And I walked in one day, or I think maybe I can't remember if I was called into this meeting, because when I came in, Nathan East was sitting there with Colin. And Colin introduced him and said, Nathan has been making the rounds at the different record labels here in the UK because he's interested in becoming a producer. He's never produced anyone before, but he's looking for his first project. And I thought it might be him being a bass player. I thought might be a nice match for you. And maybe, so he called us together to meet, and Nathan came over to my flat and I played him my demos that I did on my 4-track or my 8-track. And
that's an awkward position that they put you in too, to be honest with you. Like what if, you know, I'm saying like, here, this guy would like to forget about that. It's Nathan East. This guy would like to produce. That's a, like, if you're not into it, what do you say?
Oh no, but it was just, well, no, he didn't say he wanted to produce me yet. It was just a meeting. It was just a meeting. It was just to say, here's somebody who's interested in looking for a new artist to produce. Why don't you guys talk about it?
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember even who the other suggestions were even at this point.
Yeah.
But I was floored because I was a fan. I walked in and I was like, oh my God, this Nathan East. How many hours had I spent learning how to play his bass parts on Ricky Lee Jones, on Olivia Newton-John. He's on the Soul Kiss record. There's a lot of stuff he was on that I used to practice to. So I was like, oh my God, it's Nathan East, you know, like I was excited. So to me, I was like, he's got the job, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
I was excited to work with him. And then he came over to my flat because he had to decide if he wanted to work with me too and listen to my songs, and he liked everything. And he was like, yeah, let's go for it. The only sad thing, I've never had a great experience with labels and with producers in that way, in you know, the whole studio setup. And I'm hoping that, you know, I mean, there are people that I think I would like to work with now, and maybe I could work with well. But at the time, I felt totally intimidated, a little bit bullied by the label and even by Nathan. Because what happened once we got in the studio, and if you, well, it's hard. I've been trying to get Warner Brothers and Island to release those records because they got nothing to lose. But maybe I can send you a copy and you can hear them. But you know, it's hard to get to hear them. But on the first album, Nathan ended up playing most of the bass. That was not what I intended. And it got to be like a thing of like, and I understand it in retrospect, and I hope if you leave this in, which I don't mind if you do, I hope he wouldn't be offended by it. But you know, it was his first record and mine, so we were young. I was 24 or something. He had a lot to learn. I had a lot to learn. He had a hell of a lot more experience than me,
right? And
you know, but he was under pressure from the record label. So there's all this chain of you know, where's the single? Can you do this? Blah, blah, blah. That's not right. We don't like it. There's committees, there's people, there's opinions, there's, you know, I felt a little bit, you know, I remember at one point, I can remember being underneath, like crawling underneath the mixing desk and just crying.
Wow.
Because I felt like I'd totally lost control over my vision.
Of your own record.
Of my own record, and also what I imagined it would be like. You know, I was disappointed. Like, because you dream of, I'm going to be in the studio, I'll be like Chris Christopherson and Streisand, you know, like all these microphones and.
Well, it's your project.
Yes, it's true.
Not like unreasonable.
No, it's not.
It's not. You know.
But again, then there goes my confidence thing too. Like, you know, it's not. I don't think I was strong enough to go, hey, hang on, this is my vision. I'm going to, you know, I was like.
It's kind of tough to expect that.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. That's tough to expect that out of yourself at 24.
Well, exactly.
With Nathan, with no experience, and Nathan East produce.
And then he's like, I'm going to call, we get Steve Ferroni, which I don't mind. Steve Ferroni has become a good friend, who's one of the greatest drummers of all time. Oh my God. Huge fan. And I still connect with Steve to this day. I hardly ever speak with Nathan, but I do speak with Steve. And Steve Ferroni on drums, his brother, Marcel East, on keyboards. And then he called in Eric Clapton, you know, for a little, like,
he kind of made up for it.
So yes, that was exciting. I have to say,
he threw you a bone.
That was exactly.
Look, you let me do this shit, and I'll get you Eric Clapton. Exactly. In the beginning, because at least you could have been like, well, yeah, I got a little eat a humble pie, but.
Well, I did it in get to play bass on the track that Eric Clapton's on. So
you did?
I kind of insisted on that. I'm on like 3 songs out of like 11 or something, or 4 songs.
I could totally get your frustration. I would be livid.
Played because what was really intimidating. What was the fun thing was, like, sometimes he would sit with me and he would say, and I didn't realize how many things he played the bass on, from like Anita Baker to Whitney Houston. He played on "Saving All My Love for You" on Whitney Houston. Wow. I mean, shit. And then she's like God to me. I'm sorry, one of the greatest singers that has walked this planet. One incredible voice, and just the most horrible loss I can imagine. But Nathan played on those things, and sometimes he would sit and just play all these bass lines for me. I'd watch him actually come out of his fingers, and I'd be like, oh my God, it took me hours to learn that. But he could do my songs that he played on my album. He would do them in one take, one take from top to bottom, flawless. What you hear on that record and it's done. Let's move on to the next thing.
Wow.
This was a session player who was making, like, at the time, like $2,000-$3,000 a day on every session. Like, that was like, he was loaded. He's very wealthy.
And that was back in the...
And that was in the early 80s.
Yeah. Wow.
Late 80s. Late 80s. He had a plane. But after he signed with Foreplay, I remember meeting him in a hotel once when he got the record deal for Foreplay, that, if you want to call it jazz. That thing he does with the other 3 guys. Warner Brothers just gave them millions of dollars, whatever, and they've made millions, I'm sure, because they've been like #1 on the smooth jazz chart for like 10 years or 15 years. And I remember him buying a plane because he liked to fly. He had a pilot's license.
Wow. Yeah, that is massive. That's like...
So he was really the guy, and I understand. And I know he was under pressure, because there were times he would call up Quincy Jones. He was always on the phone with Quincy Jones asking advice of what he should do to appease me and the record label. And, like he was, so I know he was in a stressful place, but we all were, so it wasn't as fun a memory as I'd like it to be. And some things turned out well, some things really didn't turn out well. I had much more fun on the second album because I got left alone. I worked with a guy who was more or less a mixer. He was kind of a producer, but he was just more to get the sounds. And and Chris Blackwell had signed me to Island.
Yeah, Island.
And Chris Blackwell just gave me free rein. He was in the bidding for the first time around, but I chose Warner Brothers. So when he found out, he was on a holiday, and one of my managers was on holiday with him somewhere. And they started talking, and then he asked what I was doing, and my manager said, oh, well, she's free. And he was like, oh, she's free again? Oh, I want to sign her.
Oh, that's so cool.
Blackwell reappeared and then signed me and let me do my thing. But then he left the label. He sold Island, or Polygram bought it or something. And it was right in that transition period. So even though I had a really good time making that record, much better time, more fun, more control, just like, I think I sang great on that record, better than one of the best vocals I've ever done on recording. I'll send you that record.
Can you do that, please? Because I only downloaded this one because that was...
I know, you can't find them. I'll send them.
Thank you so much, because I love... Thank you.
But
Maceo Parker was on that, wasn't it?
Maceo Parker, yeah.
Maceo, sorry.
Because I did a pickup gig for the JBs, for Maceo, Pee Wee, and Fred, which goes back to John Stevens. Okay, the drummer, got me the gig with Charlie Watts. And then after that, and the Jazz Center, which I stopped doing after I started working with Charlie. John Stevens has a son. John's passed away now, by the way, unfortunately. His son, Richie Stevens, is my age or our age. Mm-hmm. Richie was drummer as well. Richie was a funk drummer, like a really good funk drummer, soul R&B funk drummer. Richie was playing drums at that time for Boy George. Boy George had just left Culture Club, and Richie was playing drums for him. And Richie also had a band called Well Read on Virgin Records. It was him and another black guy singer, and he did all the music and everything. John said to me, look, my son Richie is in this band. called Well Read, and they have to do a showcase. Virgin has asked them to do a showcase, so they have to put a band together. I think you need to meet my son. John knew I played the bass. So I meet Richie, and then I play bass for Well Read.
That is so cool.
Through Well Read, I get to work for Boy George. I get my first session.
Because the drummer
was working with Boy George.
Yeah, that is
Richie's John's son, Richie, who's still playing now, Richie. Great drummer.
That's wild.
And Richie called me one night later on to say, hey, I got a pickup gig. The JBs are playing at the Brixton Academy. You want to do it? And I was like, yeah, because they didn't have a band. They pick up people as they go to different places, but it's just the 3 horn players. So I did that gig. And that's how and that was right before I got signed to Island. So afterwards I called Fred Wesley and I said, would you guys come and play on my record? Because we hit it off. They were nice people. Right. And so they did.
That is so cool.
And I still have the charts that Fred wrote out for the one song they played on the second. He wrote out the charts for the JBs. I kept them as a souvenir.
Yeah, that's a great souvenir. Oh my God.
Yeah. So that's how that happened.
You lived in London like 12 years?
Yeah, like 11 years. Like I went there in 83 and I came here. I started moving back in 94, 95. I was officially back in New York.
What made you come back, if you to whatever extent you're comfortable talking about?
Well, towards the end of that time, like the beginning of the 90s, when I forget who was prime minister then, John Major? John Major. Tony Blair was more in the 90s, later in the 90s. I think it was John Major, who the first person who took after Thatcher. For some reason, there was a huge depression in Europe, I don't know, recession or whatever in Europe at that time when she left office and things changed. And work got kind of not dried up, but it got more scarce. And more things were happening in the US. Well, I was starting to tour with bands like Gang of Four and stuff that were playing in the US. So I was like, maybe it's time to go back to the States and see what's going on there. And so I just, and then I met Sarah Lee, bass player, one of the original bass players of Gang of Four and League of Gentlemen and B-52. She's on Love Shack and Indigo Girls. And Sarah was a Brit who did like the opposite of me. In the 80s, she went to New York City and I was in London. And I'd heard about her because you hear about, that at that time, there weren't many women who were known for playing bass like there are now. And so I knew about her and I knew about Gang of Four and her history, but I'd never met her. And one night in, I guess it was 93 even, 1993. Yeah. I was very good friends with Louise Goffin, Carole King's daughter. She came to London around the same time as me. Maybe she got there in 85. And we met through Andy Gill of Gang of Four.
From Gang of Four, yeah.
Who also has passed away. And I know it's just this year of COVID. It's so sad.
Yeah.
So Louise called me one night. Louise and I used to have a band together, like a fun band. We used to call it South of Venus. And we used to write songs together and I used to play bass for her on stuff. And we were pretty good friends. We still are. I just don't see her as much, but we connected recently, which is nice. Reconnected. She called me one night and said, hey, the Indigo Girls are playing at the Town and Country. And my friend Sarah Lee, that I've been telling you about, is playing bass. So you want to go? And I was like, yeah. And I met Sarah Lee that night. And Jerry Murata was playing drums.
Okay.
So we hung out after the show and I became friends with Sarah. And Sarah lived in Woodstock. She'd been living up here in Woodstock. So I said, I want to come and visit. I want to see what this place, and I got here and then I met John Ashton, who's the guitarist from Psychedelic Furs. In fact, I just was talking to his wife before you called. Sarah was here, Jerry Murata was here, Tony Levin was like, all these people were not in the city. And I was thinking, I want to go back to New York because I love New York. I've always loved New York. It's my favorite state. The only state I really would want to live in this country. But I don't want to be in New York City again in a shoebox, in a sublet, whatever.
I know, there's no space, man. Could you imagine, especially through COVID?
I haven't even been there all year. All I've been is to JFK. I haven't been in the city. I'm scared. What I hear my friends tell me, it's so sad.
I know.
So I just can't bring myself to go into the city right now. And thankfully, I don't have to at the moment. But I came to visit here and I fell in love with the place. I was like, I'm not a country girl because I lived in the woods for a little bit, but it's not my thing. I like the city. I like sidewalk. Kingston is kind of a suburb. I've got a sidewalk side and, you know, I can walk and get a coffee and I feel, you know.
But you got a great vibe there too, though. Oh, that's the thing,
cool.
man.
It's so cool, especially now. They're flooding up from the city. I've got Brooklyn people all over the place. So that's why I chose here. I met through Sarah Lee. We became friends. I stayed with her for a while, and then that's how I met the Indigo Girls and hung out with them on tour. And then I just settled here. Like I found my own space in Kingston, and I've just been here. I've lived now in Kingston longer than anywhere in my whole life, which is crazy.
That is crazy.
Yeah, I left Philly at 17, and then a year and a half in LA, and a year in New York, and
12 years in London.
Bit of time in London, and now 25 years or something.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
It's funny. I had Amy Ray on the show. Man, you talk about
she's great.
She was so cool. She talk about direct. She was awesome. Yeah, man. It was like only thing is we didn't have a lot of time. So because she's got like a child, a record company, 2 bands.
Yes,
you know?
I know.
So it was tough, but she was. I really enjoyed talking with her. She was awesome.
Yeah, she's great.
All right. Again, I don't know if this is true. I read you described your music as Blackarack, which is pretty funny, but it's actually very accurate.
It's true because I love that stuff. Yeah. I love Bacharach, Fifth Dimension, Olivia Newton-John, Helen Reddy. You can see there's a picture of her back there.
Yeah.
I mean, Jim Croce. That is, to me, my favorite music. That's the music that really, really, really. I like rock music and guitar and stuff, but I think the music that really speaks to me is that that music. Carpenters, the singers, the melodies, the string arrangements, the lushness of that music. Bread, America, all those bands. That to me is just heaven.
Yeah.
Those are some of the greatest songs and arrangements of songs, you know, the stuff, Glenn Campbell, all of that stuff. So, you know, I kind of, you know, I don't ever want to be retro, but we all take from the things that we know or that inspire us, that we want to create. So I feel like I somehow put my own spin, which is a kind of unmusically intellectual. I don't know how I would describe it, because I don't know theory. I don't know chord, like I don't know harmony and theory so well. I can't really read music, and it all comes out of my, you know, from my mind, and I try and make it happen on MIDI or however I can get it out to make the impression. I feel like I somehow put my own spin on it, which is kind of a soulful spin on the classics. Which
well,
to
don't
me
knock
like
yourself. Let me tell you. I can't read. I don't know. Like, I know. I'll tell you right now, 90% of the guests I've had on here, no, not 90, probably 85% don't know theory. So let me tell you, if I could put out a record like this, I mean, it's beautiful. No one's sitting there listening and said, well, sounds great, makes me feel good, moves me, but does she know theory? Said nobody. So don't worry. I mean, like, who cares? You know, seriously, you know, that's your stuff. No,
it's true. It is my stuff. It's so much.
It's like, look at your career. I'm sitting there looking I don't think one of the questions when Bowie hired you, look, you got the gig,
right?
But do you know theory?
So no, he didn't say that.
Yeah, okay. So
I'm going to try and put on some light. I can see it's still getting dark.
Thank you. Oh, that's awesome. Thanks.
It's a ceiling light. So, but it's like, let me just dim it just a tiny bit.
You got a rotating switch even in Kingston. I thought they only had those in Manhattan.
Okay. Not so bad.
Thank you. It's a very accurate name of the descriptions. I thought I read it. I got a chuckle out of that.
I mean, that Alfie is like my favorite song of all time.
Really?
It's just, to me, it's the perfect song. It's just got everything in it. It's short, it's sweet, but it's got a beautiful, I mean, just, it's like the ABCs of songwriting. That is just genius.
What about a cover of Alfie for your next record?
Maybe. I do it live. I used to do it live. Somebody taught me the chords, which are very complicated. Jules Shear, I don't know if he's a great songwriter who's also here in Woodstock. Jules Shear, he told me that I got one of the chords wrong. The person who taught me the chords is a guitarist, amazing guitarist named Stuart Smith, who plays with the Eagles now.
Okay.
Stuart was playing guitar when I was working with Dar Williams. And I remember going to his hotel room one night and I said, would you teach me? Because he could play, one of those guitar players that just can play anything, like just anything, perfectly and beautifully and clean and everything. I said, I bet you can teach me how to play Alfie in the right key. Like, so it's simple, but it's still the right chords. And he wrote him out. He was real anal. He wrote him out on a little chart. And then I learned it and I used to do it in my show all the time in my life when I do an acoustic show. Yeah, Bacharach is definitely, Marvin Hamlish, another one of my favorite writers. Neil Diamond, oh my God.
Yeah, he's great. He's a great songwriter.
Great songs.
I'm going to ask you about a couple of the artists that you worked with. If you could tell me how you got the gig and if there's any cool or interesting stories about working with them. Lenny Kravitz.
Lenny Kravitz. Very interesting how that gig came about. My mother died on June 22nd, 2011. Her funeral was the 30th of June that year. She kind of went unexpectedly, but she went very peacefully and I was right by her side, so I couldn't wish for better. And she was not in pain or anything. And she was 8 weeks shy of her 90th birthday. So she did pretty darn good.
Yeah.
So I'm very happy with that. I was in Philadelphia for like those 10 days. She was kind of fading out in the hospital. And the day before, on the 29th, I was in the Starbucks on 34th and Walnut. I can remember getting a coffee just fried from organizing and funeral things and plans and family and blah, 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 blah. And I was like, it's 5 o'clock. I'm getting coffee. My cell phone rings and it's Craig Ross, guitarist.
Yeah, I had Craig on here, yeah.
Craig, I love Craig. Craig and I
had a player. That guy's one of the best blues guitarists.
Yes, he is. Yes,
he doesn't hit any wrong notes, and he's so humble and so chilled.
I agree.
Yeah.
And he doesn't read music either. He's a total distinct player. He's incredible, and he's a great guy. I miss him. I'd done 2 albums with him in the past. I did an album for Skin from Skunk and Nancy. Her first solo album. Craig and I were on that session together. That's where we met in Belgium, 2003 or something. I don't know, it was a long time ago. And then I had recently done an album with him in like 2010 in New York City at that studio that closed down like right after the Warm studio. It was a famous studio. I did something with Bowie there too once. Anyway, Craig and I would do the Io. Io is spelled A-Y-O. She's a black singer, half German, half French or something. Maybe she's based in Paris, but she's German or something. Kind of soul singer, but a bit more interesting than that. Kind of like a European version of like India Ari or something like that. Anyway, we did her album in New York. So Craig and I knew each other already. So Craig called me that day in the Starbucks and he said, hey, what are you doing? I said, well, I'm burying my mother tomorrow. Wow. But otherwise, not much. I had just come back from Australia with Olivia Newton-John. I landed the day my mother went in hospital, came back just in time. Craig said, well, you know what? We need a bass player. I said, for what? I have to be honest. I didn't know that Lenny was touring so much and working so much. I knew he was still making records occasionally, but I have to be honest, I hadn't really followed his career. I didn't know he was so massive in Europe still, like, and around the world. Like we play big arenas and things in Europe, it's not quite so much in the US, but in Europe, he's really big. So he said, well, we're about to go on this tour. We just finished some dates opening for U2, but he's got a new record out and we got a big tour the rest of the year. And we need a bass player. And I said, well, can I think about it? He said, no, we need you now, like right away, because Tony had just fallen ill and they were just in a little hiatus in between legs of the tour. So they were about to start up again. And I need to, if I was going to do it, I had to be ready to go like as soon as possible. So I thought about it and I was like, well, I didn't have a particular job lined up. I had things that always something I can be doing. But so I said, yes, okay, let me bury my mom. I'll get to, the rehearsals were in Miami. I said, I'll be there in 3 days. July 3rd, I flew to Miami and then I was playing with him ever since.
Wow.
That's why I got the gig.
Holy smokes.
I went down right after that and it was almost good in a way. I didn't have time to think about my mom.
Yeah.
I just straight into this job that just kept going and going and going and going and going. And 9 years later, you know, the only thing that stopped it is COVID.
COVID. Yeah.
So it's been a bit.
He'd be picking things back up once it gets.
I'm not sure. You know, I know he definitely said he was feeling like probably safe for him anyway. He was going to shut down for like probably until 2022. Right. And I wouldn't be surprised, you know, I don't know how long it's going to take for that kind of level of performing to come back. It might be different from smaller venues or things in the summer, outdoors or whatever. But for his level of work, I think he's probably right engaging that. And what he does by then, who knows? That's too far.
Everybody's in that same position pretty much because it's so far in the future. Everybody wants to play, but what kind of nonsense do you get? You know, do you have to pay your own insurance now? All those kinds of issues come into play. Who the hell is going to spend money on it? You can't fund your own insurance if someone gets sick. You can
hardly fund especially the size tours he does. You can hardly fund them on your own. I mean, I think he spends some of his own money to keep those things rolling. So.
Right. I'm not surprised at all.
So, you know, I don't know. I feel like I'm definitely on to the next phase now for myself. It's just like I just want to work on my own stuff from here on in. And any other things that I can kind of squeeze in there will be a nice bonus.
Yeah.
But I don't think I want to spend as much of my energy and focus and time on another artist right now.
You can't. I mean, it's common sense. You know, you're waiting for.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
That's the problem. You know, like who the hell? That's the terrible thing about this. The unpredictability of all this. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. It's crazy.
Olivia Newton-John. I read that you really enjoyed that gig.
That's my favorite. Bowie's top of the list, always will be, and just an incredible opportunity. But coming from my love of AM radio, going all the way back to eating my cream of wheat, listening to I Honestly Love You in the morning before, you know, second grade or whatever, that was like nirvana for me to be able to walk on stage with her. I always wanted to play for her. And I remember saying to Nathan at the time when I found out he was on some of her albums, I said, my God, Nathan, I hope one day I'm ever good enough to play with Olivia Newton-John. And he was like, you will be. And I was like, I don't know. Actually, he was very instrumental and was one of the best advice I ever had. At the time, he said, if you want to keep playing as a bass player, you got to play the 5-string, especially at that time, because everything was, and I got one and got diligent about being comfortable with it and being able to go back and forth. And it's true. I could never have existed through the 90s without
Why
being
was that?
5-string. It was all the low notes. It's funny enough because I haven't played the 5-string once since I worked with Lenny, because he's total old school. So was Maceo Parker. I remember when I went to that JB's pickup gig, we had a very short rehearsal the night before. I got to the rehearsal studio. I opened up my 5-string Music Man and my 4-string Music Man, and I put the cases out in front of Maceo Parker. And I said, Mr. Parker, do you have a choice? Would you like me to play the 5-string? And he looked at me and he said, he looked at the 5-string bass and he said, put that shit away. Bass don't have 5 strings. Bass has got 4 strings. You play a D, you go up to a D, God damn it. I was like, oh.
Right on, man. Okay. No problem.
I love you, Maceo. I'm with you, brother. I just gotta ask.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So it's kind of the same with Lenny, you know. And but this Donna Lewis stuff, because there's some synth stuff, and that's what it was in the 90s. There was a lot of stuff where I was recreating stuff that was on a synth bass, or people just were writing with low like bass notes for some reason because the 5-string got popular in the 80s. So I pulled mine out the other day for the first time in 9 years. I got my 5-string. My 5-string Stingray here.
There you go.
Oh my God. It was weird. I was playing it yesterday. I was like, oh my God, this takes me back.
Do you prefer playing 4 or 5, or it doesn't matter?
Oh, a 4
Yeah.
for sure. I'm old school as well in that sense. It would be much nicer if I could stay on that. But it's kind of fun for a change. It does feel kind of nice. You do a little run and you go way down to that D or something. It's like, oh, that's nice.
That is cool.
Like hits a little spot.
Is there any gigs you want to talk about that were like you have some good memories from, or that nostalgically you feel great about? Well,
the Olivia Newton-John was really special because, you know, it was some weird serendipitous things that happened on that. The last time I worked with her was just before my mother passed. We had gone to Australia. We were in Australia doing a few different things. We did a show, I think, and we did something for like Toyota or something in Melbourne. I'd have to look at I don't remember which. Yeah, I think it was something in Melbourne first. And then we went to Brisbane, which is near where her home is, her Australian home. And also she has a spa that she co-owns with another guy, an old friend of hers. It's called Gaia. And I don't remember exactly what the city or town it is located, but it's near Brisbane. It's like 30 minutes or something from Brisbane Airport, and not too far from her house, her Australian house. She treated between like Melbourne and a festival. The last show I did with her was a festival in Adelaide, and we played with the Adelaide Symphony. The symphony orchestra was on that gig, that last gig. So all the old songs, and she does all those great material, you know, I Honestly Love You, all of that stuff with the orchestra, like on the records. That was probably one of the most amazing moments of my entire life. I felt like I was levitating. I didn't even think I was in my body anymore. I was like, there it is, that voice in my ears. She sings everything in the same key. At that time, she was singing everything in the original key, except You're the One That I Want, for some reason, was like one semitone down. God knows why, but everything else, all the Grease stuff, all the country stuff, all in the same key. And that's some serious pipes she's got. Just the beauty, to me, it's like the voice of an angel. And I just love her voice. And the control and the precision and just the interpretations of the song, of the music. It's just like, who does that anymore? You know, I was like, that's such a skill. It's such a beautiful craft. So that I have to say, that moment, like especially that gig in Adelaide, was just one of the most special moments of my whole career. I will never forget it. It led to something very interesting. And when we had this week in between Brisbane and Adelaide, we went to her spa. She treated everybody in the band who wanted to go for a week at the spa.
Oh, that's cool.
The first treatments of the first day were on her. The rest of the week, if you wanted more massage or whatever, but the meals were included, and you had your own little bungalow. And I used to get up every morning.
That's quite nice.
Oh, she was the sweetest person. Oh my God, was she sweet. And then the most exciting thing of all was one night while we were at Gaia, she was like, I'm inviting everybody over to my house. We can make food and hang out at my house. And first she came and picked us up, and we went to the grocery store with Olivia Newton-John.
Oh my God.
Like my dream, I was just like, this is not happening. This is somebody I've idolized since I was like a child. In fact, I have all my vinyl of hers here. I have it signed. But I have a I have a box here with like physical, you know, all the old albums, everything. I brought them once to Japan. I think we did again. I was like, can you sign everything I got?
That is so funny.
She signed them all. And I have a beautiful songbook that she signed. It's in my bedroom.
It's funny how you talk to certain people, you're with certain people, and they just did something to you that's like, oh my God.
I can't, you know, and I tried to say that to her. And I said, you know, and also I explained to her one time, I said, my friend Sterling Campbell, Sterling likes Olivia too. We used to make a joke. We had a thing called Blacks for Olivia. We called ourselves BFOs.
BFOs. Oh my God, that's hilarious.
And I told her the story. I said, you know, me and my friend Sterling, I said, we were two little black kids growing up in a neighborhood where if you went around and told the kids you were listening to, you know,
you're not cool.
If not for you or whatever, let me be there. They would look at you like, what? You know, so we were secret BFOs. You know?
It's so funny.
And she loved that story. I was telling it to her when she was signing my albums. I was like, you have no idea how much this means to me. And I got her an autograph for Sterling too while I was in there.
That was nice. That's cool.
But she took us to her house and we shopped and we made pasta and salad and we sat out on the porch and a friend of hers came by and we sat out and we watched the kangaroos and she was really to let me wash some clothes and she was just so down to earth and cool. We sang songs at the kitchen table. She was like, what are you working on? I had written a new song. I sang it.
How nice.
She was great. And then she asked us an interesting question at the table. This was really deep. I was concerned about my mother only because she was getting on with age. And I felt like I had spent so much time away and I didn't get to see her enough, you know, because I'm always working. That's one of the sacrifices of touring and working is you just can't be there for weddings and you just can't make it.
Yeah.
So I was feeling a little like, I don't know, I guess it was now in retrospect, it was some intuition that maybe this was the end for her. She wasn't particularly sick. So she was still at home on her own and she was doing okay, my mom. She was just slowing down. So her death was just kind of a gradual, you know, whatever. But Olivia went around the table, I remember after dinner, and she said, I want everybody to tell one thing that you're afraid of. Right now, just like, don't think too much about it. We're going to go from one person to another. And I want you to say what the thing that's most troubling you right this minute. Like if you can think of it off the top of your head. And when it got to me, I said, my mother, I'm worried about my mother. I'm worried that I'm not doing enough for her. I haven't spent enough time. I don't know. There's something I could be doing.
That's pretty heavy.
And that was what came up for me, I remember. And then some people said other different things. And like she was often doing things like that. She's a very spiritual person. So she was interested in stuff like some of the things, you know, we talked about earlier. And then also at Gaia, she used to come, we did a hike once. There's some beautiful grounds. You can go and hike up a mountain and have this really nice view of everything. And at the top of this trail was a giant Buddha, like a big Buddha statue with the little lotus things floating in the thing. And next to that was the place where you did yoga. So there was a yoga at 7 a.m. at Gaia every day, and they ring a bell, you hear it ring, and then you make your way up the thing to the yoga. I was doing yoga with Livy like in the morning, like she's on the mat next to me. I'm like, this is not happening. I'm doing down dog with Olivia Newton-John right next to me. It's so fucking cool.
That is cool.
But afterwards I'd go up to the statue and I would meditate and I would pray and I'd think of my mom, and I spent a lot of that week was so necessary for what I didn't know was coming.
Yeah.
And so then I land at JFK after this amazing concert at Adelaide Symphony. I had the cellos behind me. I was just in heaven, you know. And then my mom passed 10 days later after I landed. And I wrote to Olivia. I remember saying, "You'll never guess." I said, "Thank you so much for the experience you gave me just before this time, because it really helped me to get through it." And the biggest part of that whole thing, I have to tell this part of the story, this very emotional part. When my mother went in hospital, she kind of like she actually had some ailments she didn't even know she had, but she was functioning fine. But she just literally died of old age, really. She started slowing down, and she just stopped speaking after 5 days even. She was just slowly going to sleep, which was a beautiful way to go.
Yeah.
Nothing attached to her, no medication, no nothing. She just was going. When she first got in the hospital, she was still speaking and she was pretty lucid, but she was kind of, a little bit out of it. They said she might have had some mini strokes or so it was just kind of, they were just monitoring her. I had jury duty, funny enough, in Kingston. So I had to go to Philly, and then I had to run back to jury duty just to tell them my mother was dying. And then they excused me, and then I went straight back. When I was home for that one day after getting out of jury duty, I called my mother at the hospital to just kept checking on her every day. How are you doing today? Fine. As I was speaking to her, 2 women from her church, from the Baptist church, came in to see my mom, and I could hear them on the phone. Hey, Ruby, how you doing? My mother's name was Ruby. We all called her Ruby as well. I never called her Mom.
Really?
So yeah, I don't know why. We just everybody.
That's so nice.
Almost everybody did. I don't know why, but that's how it was when I grew up. So I just thought that's what everybody did. So people were talking. Her friends from the church were speaking with her, and she was kind of a little bit. Maybe they had given her something for something. I don't know. But she said, "Oh, I'm going to hang up now because my friends are here," and then she kind of drifted off, but she didn't hang up. And so I was sitting there listening to the phone. I was just stayed on the phone waiting for her to hang up. And her friends, they started a conversation and they were like, how you doing? And she's like, oh, well, whatever they said. And then, 15, 20 minutes maybe went by. And about 3 times the women said, who's on the phone, Ruby? And then she would say, there's nobody on the phone. And then they didn't say anything again. And then eventually they were like, you should hang up the phone. Like eventually they said it, but just before they did, they asked her again. They said, is somebody on the phone? And she said, my daughter's on the phone. She just came back from Australia with Olivia Newton-John. And the way she said that, Craig, I was bawling my eyes out. I wasn't meant to hear that. But that one thing made my entire life, my whole career, worth it.
All the sacrifices.
I always wondered if she was upset with me for not being there, or how. She never really said, I'm proud of you, or she wasn't. She was a Southern Baptist lady, like they don't emote very much.
Yeah.
I didn't have an emotional relationship like that with my mother. She was steadfast and steady and calm and just did what she had to do. But I knew there was things inside that she couldn't express in the way that we express things these days, or that I would express them. So something about the way she said that made me know. It was a gift for me to know that, just by this weird coincidence that she didn't hang up the phone. And then right after that,
and you didn't hang up the phone.
Again, and I didn't. I don't know why I stayed on. They weren't talking about anything in particular. And so I think of Olivia for that. So something about that connection.
Wow.
From the radio.
I got goosebumps on that.
With Olivia Newton-John, and that was like, wow, this is like too much. So Olivia holds a special place for me. And and once in a while I still write to her. I emailed her when her cancer came back a little while ago, and I guess she's still fighting that, but I hope she's better. She's such a strong person and positive person. And she might not know it, but she helped me through a lot. And I went to see her again for the first time in 2016. She played in Montclair, New Jersey. And I was like, oh, I want to go. And I took a friend of mine from the gym who was I had on a T-shirt of hers once at the gym. And one of the instructors was like, I love Olivia Newton-John. And I joked with her. I said, not as much as I do. And she's like, oh, yes, I do. I've seen Xana do amazing. Like, she went on this whole thing. And I said, well, okay, I'm going to do a real big treat for you then. And I took her to meet Olivia. I took her to that gig, with her fiance at the time, and she was just beside herself. But Olivia welcomed her with, like, I knew it would be okay if I brought her and introduced her, and that's how nice she is as a person. So I went to see her that night at Montclair, and I'm in the audience, and she comes out for the encore, and she thanks everybody and everything. And I hadn't seen her yet. I'm just in the audience. I'm like 10th row. We had great seats. And then she says, I want to give a shout out to one of the best bass players in the world who happens to be here tonight.
Wow.
And I was like, no, that's like a dream come true for me.
That was so sweet.
It's so kind of her to do that. Like, no one knows where, but she knew I would, like, she was like, she gave me a shout out and then we went back and hung with her after the show before she went to the bus.
God, that was such an emotional. So pat on the back to you. You must have done your work, because you are not stoic. You are emotional. You do communicate and share really well. Oh,
indeed. So that was one of my, that was one of the things that made me different as a kid in a way.
Yeah.
Now it's like, a lot of people
But
can't.
you kept that as a result. You didn't shut it down or anything. That took, I'm sure that took work, patience, whatever it was.
Well, I think I've also been lucky, and I've also been very careful about who I surround myself with. I have a lot of acquaintances and I have a lot of good friends, but I'm really careful that I'm around people where I can be who I am, that I don't have to try and hide something or pretend something, or if anyone makes me uncomfortable, I don't want to know. I'm sorry. I can't,
there's no reason for it.
Uncomfortable.
Why should you?
I mean, sometimes people make you uncomfortable, but it's like you said, your partner or whatever, and they push a button, but it's something you need to work on. So they make you uncomfortable because they love you, not because they're just, fucking with you, or they're there you go.
I totally get that. Well, so, wow, that was such a good story. Thank you for sharing that. That was really sweet. Welcome. Let me switch to music just for a few minutes. It's just so nice hearing all those personal stories. Tell me, is there anything you haven't done yet musically that you'd like to do?
Oh, so many things. I really there's something I'm interested in, and that's why I'm taking some lessons from some lessons on the computer and like digital recording stuff, because I'm only just now really starting to like get my head around that. But I'm a real old school. I just hate giving up. I still have.
You want to cut tape?
I do. I want reels. I could work so well. I did so much more work when I was working with a computer, but SMPTE running MIDI with 8 tracks of real stuff, bouncing tracks. I could mix and do all that stuff without batting an eyelash. I get in Logic or whatever, and I'm just like confused. Yeah. Everything's in the computer. Things that I don't understand how it connects to it. It's a nightmare. And then you record something and it comes back and it's like, that's not what that sounded like. Something's happening in there that doesn't really sound real anymore. So I'm making friends with that, just like I'm making friends with social media. So I'm learning now a little bit more. During the lockdown, the original lockdown, I took a 12-week course at Berkeley Online in Logic.
Wow, that's a serious commitment.
So I really learned a lot in that, so I can finally mix and so my basics are much better. Good. But now I want to go the step bigger because I want to do film music, and I might have an opportunity to do that. But I would like to learn how to score things, TV, whatever. I want to orchestrate things, even though I don't read music or know theory. Because you can do that with digital things. There's so much you can recreate. And you can even write stuff, and then it makes the notation for you. So someone can actually read what you've written on the keyboard or whatever. So, I just would like to compose music that's not necessarily a song for the radio or whatever. That's something that I've always wanted to do. So that's hopefully in the cards.
Awesome.
And the only person I would love to work with, I don't know if I would now, but someone I've always wanted to work with that I've never worked with is Annie Lennox.
Oh, man, you've got
I
you've
think
got
she's
the
amazing.
experience to work with her. That's for sure. My
Yeah, well,
God, it's like right up that alley, man.
Yeah, I've met her a couple of times, of course, through David, and so David liked her and they were friends. And I met her once on something that I did with David. She was in the audience, and I think I did Under Pressure, so I was nervous because, you know, she had done that first with him, and that was the whole reason he thought of doing it with me, was because of his version with her. So I've always loved her music, and what I see of her as a person, I think she's very interesting and pretty amazing. So if there was anybody I would want to work for, again, it would be her.
Yeah, let's put it out there, Annie. If you're listening, have your girl get a hold of my girl, and I'll hook you guys up. Top 3 desert island discs, just for this moment.
Hissing of Summer Lawns, Joni Mitchell, my favorite album of all time. After that would be, oh my goodness. Oh my God. Probably, I want to say a Streisand record, probably Streisand Songbird. And then third would be, oh, that's a hard one.
I know. The third one is all the pressure's on, man.
Because what's left? What's my other top favorite bands? Well, it'll probably be Queen. Which album? It'd have to be Night at the Opera.
Very cool. All righty. This is a tough question. What do you like most about yourself?
My hands.
No, I don't mean your hands. You
know what
like
I mean? Myself as a person.
Spiritually, or my hands. And
let's see. What do I like most about myself? I don't know. That's a hard question. Why is that a hard question? I guess I think my ability to get along with most people. I don't know. Like my lack of, I should say, I don't know how I would put it. Wow, that's a hard question. What do I like most about myself? I guess, I don't know. It's hard to answer because I'm not sure how to answer it in a way. I think I guess what I like most about myself is, how would I put it, is that I don't have, at least to my knowledge, too many enemies. Not enemies, but I like most about myself that I seem to be able to get along with most people. I don't know. I think it could. No, that's
not really about you.
What? I don't know what it would be. Then I guess my ability to play music is what I like most about myself.
It could be. We need to have a part 2 and find out the real.
Yeah, I don't really know. Honestly, I don't know. Maybe there are many things I like about myself.
No, I don't believe that. But it is a tough question.
It is tough because I don't know. I mean, there are a lot of things I don't like about myself.
Oh, of course, those come easy to all of us. It's like go down the list. You know? So
I don't honestly. Yeah, we might have to have a part 2. I think you stumped me on that one.
All right. Tell me the, this is a good one. Has your life been different than what you imagined?
Yes. I'm not sure if it's been better or worse, but I'm not sure. It's definitely different.
That's a funny one. Yeah.
It's definitely different.
Do you have any hobbies outside of music?
I guess writing, but I have to admit I haven't been writing much lately. Like more about like writing. I used to write not necessarily screenplays, but just, you know, journaling or essay, but that's just writing.
Yeah.
This would be my other hobby, but I haven't done too much of it lately. I have to be honest. And I wonder if it's because I don't know if I'm almost scared to put the pen to the paper. There's a lot going on. You know what I mean? And it's like, and I feel like I actually am holding myself back, and I keep saying, come on, you can't call yourself a writer if you don't write. But it's like, whew, there's a lot going on inside, especially this year.
It's terrible. It's a very tough year. But yeah, you probably feel better if you wrote, even if you wrote like
you know what?
Horrible.
Yeah,
I
right.
think so.
Well, that's
even if it was horrible stuff,
right.
Because the nice thing about writing is, and you read it, you're like,
and you get
wow,
it.
that feels better, and then you can throw it out if you want.
That's right. That's right. Well, that's true. That's so true. That's definitely my experience.
You know, I did this thing one time, because I told you I had a rough childhood, and I wanted to forgive my father. Mm-hmm. And so I wrote something, and I was sincere, and then I burned it in the ashtray in front of me. Yeah. And let me tell you, I felt like a million-pound weight got lifted off my chest.
Yeah.
I never realized, I mean, I've read that when you forgive somebody, it's not really for them, it's for you, but I had not experienced it at that level. But oh my God, I was just like, why did I wait 55 years to do that?
Yeah.
You know, it was just like, whew. So yeah, that's why I was like, write anything, you can always burn it if it's,
Yeah, you're right about that.
Yeah.
I gotta pick up the old pen. I do like writing. Other hobbies, no, not really. Well, I don't do much. Well, I've kind of finished. Right, I'm trying to be reasonable about it, because I'm not Tom Hanks. But the only thing that I have, I don't know if you call it a hobby, but I the only one thing I collect, I guess, other than guitars, seem to keep multiplying, is typewriters. I love.
Really? That's so wild.
I have a collection that I've been doing for, I don't know, 20 some years now. I have like 12 machines.
Do you type on a typewriter?
I do.
Yeah.
I do. I usually I rotate
things.
them. I've always loved them. It comes from my early days of screenwriting, like I just love that whole thing. There's such a romanticism in a way of that machine. And also I miss that. I miss the privacy, as you would say.
Yeah, your accent is picking more and more. I love it.
I miss that. And I started getting typewriters, and then I go to a place in Manhattan called Gramercy Typewriter. Little guy named Paul. I always forget his last name, but he's been in the documentaries they make about typewriters. He's in one of those movies. I found this guy because, I bought my first typewriter on eBay. It was like crappy, and I wanted to see if you can fix it up and make it refurbished. This guy at the time had the only business left in Manhattan. He had been running for 39 years, since 1939 or something like it. The family had held it on, and it was this tiny little room on Fifth Avenue between 23rd and 22nd on the 4th floor, 250 square feet or something, like 400 square feet or something. Just typed like this Paul and his son, Justin, only two left doing this, like refurbishing typewriter, a little room with oil and a vat. They got typewriters up to the ceiling. It's just like packed with typewriters. And I discovered this place, and he's been refurbishing every single one of my typewriters for me. And sometimes I've bought ones and I take them to Paul, and he's like, that one's not worth it, So I let him keep it for parts, because they always need parts.
Right. That's nice.
Someone might bring in one of those, and then, something's broken on it, but that one hasn't fixed, So Paul and I have had a relationship for a long time. But it's kind of sad now considering COVID, but just last year, we're talking about privacy and typewriters. Paul opened a storefront on 17th Street between 6th and 7th. because typewriters have gotten that popular.
Are you so
they
he's
were able
opening
to,
wow.
He opened a storefront, and my wife bought me the last typewriter that I wanted for my collection was a Remington Rand. I didn't have one that's named after Ayn Rand, the writer.
Okay, yeah.
The Remington is like 1938, 36. No, this is a 50s typewriter, 56. Anyway, we found one that was already pristine and done in the storefront. And I hadn't seen, it's hard to find that particular model that's in good shape. They have a lot of them on eBay, but they're in such bad repair. This one was already refurbished and ready to sell. So I have that. It was my final typewriter now. I'm not getting any more. I can't afford them anymore now, but I have a nice little collection, and they all are different, and they're all in like complete working order, completely refurbished, ribbons, everything. I have cases downstairs, and I take one out, put them on a table.
What an interesting hobby. That's so cool.
So that's probably the only thing I do outside of music that interests me is typewriters. They're beautiful. And yeah, Paul was saying, as the years go by, people were wanting them more and more for privacy reasons. Companies were looking for typewriters. Kids were starting to come in for typewriters. That's how they could afford to suddenly open up a storefront in Manhattan. Yeah. The rent.
Oh, it's crazy. Yeah.
And he does Woody Allen's typewriters, because Woody Allen has used the same typewriter to type all his movies for the last 60 years or however long he's been making movies. It's an Olympia, a 1952 Olympia. And I've seen it in a documentary for Woody, and it's like a red kind of cover, but he said he lost the cover years ago, like his is all tattered and everything. But my guy, Paul, keeps him in ribbons or something. He repaired, and he does Tom Hanks, who also is a huge typewriter collector.
That's interesting.
Tom Hanks has like 250 machines, like I'm so jealous.
The secret underworld of
Paul does, yeah, because I've been into Paul's place, and he's had a typewriter there, and go, check this out. I'm sending this one out to LA to Tom soon. And it'll be some incredible one with a wooden table like some rare, something from some old newspaper or something, and it's just pristine. You're like, oh my God, gorgeous machines. Incredible.
Very cool. Very cool.
So yeah, Paul is saying that people were looking for them again. So they're getting popular, which is good.
Well, I got one more question, and you said you might not be okay with this one, but if you're not, we'll get another one. If you are, cool. And it's no pressure at all. That was, what was the biggest change what's been the biggest change in your personality over the last 10 years, and how much of that has been intentional and how much is just a natural part of aging?
Biggest change in my personality. Probably I'm more confident with my abilities. I think that's just been, that's something I had to work on. I don't know that would have happened. I had to really think about it and start to look at what I'm actually doing. Like, what are you doing? What can you play? What experiences have I been through where I got through them where I thought I couldn't? Even getting the Bowie gig, I was like, how in the world am I going to do this? This guy's called me. I don't know. I'm in here with Carlos Alomar and Reeves Cabrels and all these amazing musicians, and I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. It's like, why would he call me? But then as I look back over things in the last few years, it's been the first time, because I'm pretty humble. I just am, because I don't take anything for granted. I just don't. Yeah. I don't feel entitled to anything. I don't think I'm special or better than anybody. I've never had that. I've never been that person. And I think for a little moment, like in my early 30s, when I was young and hot and playing with, the world was my oyster. I'm on private jets and all these things, I might have had a little bit of arrogance there that was not really real for me. Like, that's not my usual thing. So I think over the years, I think I've learned to, I've changed in terms of just being able to accept the fact, the reality of my situation. I obviously must be good enough because look what I've done.
Hell yeah.
And I really, for so long, never trusted that. Never thought could get to the next level, or anyone else would call again, or that I was good enough to, sit in the same booth with Tony Levin at the Ampeg booth, or what, it's like, oh my God, that's Tony Levin, but I've done this much compared to Tony Levin, but that's not the point.
Yeah, that's not the point at all.
So
that's awesome.
I think I've come to realize that about myself, and I'm very happy that I feel more confident to say I'm a really, really good musician. Not just bass player, but just a good musician, because I care so much about music still. Like same as when I was a little girl. That hasn't diminished one bit. In fact, it gets more, and it gets more frustrating, because in some ways, I used to think it was really frustrating to be a little girl in Philly who had dreams, and how am I going to get out, and how am I going to make it and do all these things that I dream about every day? But now it's like, it's even, I had more, I guess maybe I'm just imagining it, because you can't really remember what it was like when you were young, but I feel like now I had more time then. I had more, maybe because I didn't know so many things. You just feel like that, you have so much time. And now it's more frustrating in a way, because I have less years probably ahead of me than I do behind me. But also it's harder. I have to pay the mortgage, and I have to do it's like I'm more frustrated with like that I don't, maybe I'm not as comfortable as maybe I would like to be in order to pursue some of the things I still want to do. But that's not going to stop me from doing it. And it doesn't stop my love for it. I will work at this until I take my last breath, basically, because that's why I'm here. I think I realize that's why I'm here.
Well, listen,
or one of the reasons anyway.
I'll tell you what I like most about you is that you're so sincere in everything you say. So I really appreciate that. And you can feel that when someone's like that. So thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. Well, that's, I think that's what I mean about what I like about myself, I guess, is that I want to be as, I keep it real. I don't have any, I'm not after anything. I'm not trying to be something, or maybe I was when I was younger. I had more ambition, I think, in that way. Of course, by the time I was making my albums and stuff, I was just full of, 20-year-old adrenaline and all that. But it's like, it's important, I think, in terms of having had the experience of traveling so much and seeing people and meeting people after a show, or meeting other musicians or whatever. There's so much, there can be so much that's not sincere about people, especially in when you're around famous people, or you're connected to famous people. There's so much insincerity, and it's not even always about the person. It's like it's just the culture of people that we, squirrels don't do it, but people are like idolize, somebody,
squirrels
and they become,
That's great.
I say that because I love my squirrels.
Squirrels.
I feed them and I love them, and they're my zen. Like I when I'm having my tea in the morning, I watch the squirrels, and they kind of center me. No other animals kind of do what human beings do. So, I know there's some people I might have not been able to be truthful with or something, but it's not because of ego in that sense. It's more because of my own faults or insecurities about, my one thing I don't like about myself is I'm not good with confrontation, which is probably why I couldn't work in the film industry.
Yeah, right.
I'm not good at wanting to stir the pot. I just want everybody to be calm and everything to be cool, but that's not real. That's not realistic. So, I think that I have sometimes maybe hurt some people unintentionally because I'm trying to save them. And that's not always a good thing. So those would be my only regrets. But for the most part, I'm 100% sincere. I don't have, I got nothing to.
No agenda.
No, not really. Too much trouble. No drama.
Gail, thank you.
Hopefully.
I want to thank you for being so sweet and spending so much time. And
You're welcome.
I
And I
want to
hope
tell.
I made up. I apologize again for last time. If I could only show you a picture of how
Oh
horrible
my
I
God!
felt
Don't
the
even
other day.
go there,
I
please.
felt so bad about that.
Don't
I
e-
was saying to
don't. You know what I did when I hung up the phone? I just rescheduled your appointment. I didn't think
there you
anything.
go. You did. You sure did.
That was it. I didn't think, oh man, that, God, how could she? That was it. It's like totally cool. I'm so happy that we got to connect, honestly. So don't even worry about it.
Well, I'm glad I could do it. And again, I keep saying I hope my glasses don't get too much glare, but I'm losing my eyesight, and I got to be realistic about this. It's like I'm going to have to start wearing these when I'm on stage soon. I'm not into contact lenses, at least not yet anyway.
I got LASIK. I had contacts for years.
Yeah, my friend got that.
And they did one eye. Because one eye I could see far, and one eye I could see close. So they sort of, they adapt a little bit. It's not perfect, but I couldn't stand contacts every day.
Yeah, there's no way I can do that. I don't think I can do it. And also with my skin, even I have eye irritate, like it's all connected. So I'm like, the less I have to do.
Less stress, yeah. Yeah, totally.
But I don't mind wearing glasses, but I'm almost, I can't see close up. Like if I take these off, it's a blur, and I'd like to be able to at least look you in the eye on the screen, whatever the hell we're doing.
You look great, so don't worry about it. Let me tell people where to find you. First of all, you could find Gail on last 5 Bowie records. Just go. She's played with Gang of Four. I mean, you can go listen to the beginning of this show. She's played with tons of people. She has 3 solo records. Unfortunately, only one of them is out. It's called, I have it right here. It's a great album cover too. It's called I used, yeah, it's beautiful. Flowers. I don't know what they are, but they're beautiful. It's called I Used to Be. It is such a pretty record, man. I mean, she writes really good songs, and I would really encourage everybody to check that out. If you don't have a lot of time, I'll just tell you my favorite songs on the record are the last 3. I mean, if you don't like those, something's wrong with you. You have no soul. And you can find Gail online on Facebook at Gail Ann Dorsey, and no E, it's
and no E.
Yeah, Gail Ann Dorsey Music. And also on Instagram at Gail Ann Dorsey. Also, there is something going on now called a Bowie celebration. When does that take place?
It's going to happen on his birthday, January 8th. You'll be able to buy tickets through like rollingconcerts.com. There's some.
Well, I'll just go to BowieCelebration.com.
Yeah, you'll find.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Mike Garson is presenting it, Bowie's longtime keyboardist. And it's a bunch of alumni. We're all getting together remotely and re-recording some of our favorite songs. I'm just singing. I'm not playing any bass, and I'm not doing Under Pressure. So, but I'm doing one of my favorite Bowie songs that I've never sung before. So I'm looking forward to that.
Which one? Oh, you don't say? Okay, keep it quiet.
I don't know when you're going to broadcast this, but I want to.
I'm going to make sure it gets out. It'll be out in a 2 or 3 weeks probably. I'll get it out before the 20th. I promise you.
Oh, okay. Then
sure.
No, I don't want to say which one because I want to keep it a secret.
No, that's cool.
I want the fans to keep wondering what it could possibly be, but it's not one they've ever heard me cover. So I'm doing that. That's on his birthday, and it's 5 years since he's passing, he passed on January 10th, I believe. His birthday is January 8th. So it's kind of a 5-year. Usually, I'm part of a show that we do in New York City since he passed away at the Cutting Room with some of the later band members.
Is that place still around?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's hanging in there.
Yeah.
I didn't realize it was co-owned by the actor that played Mr. Big on Sex and the City.
Really? North is his last name. Something North, I think.
Yeah, he's the co-owner of the Cutting Room. And I
didn't know that.
I did not know that. Well, last Christmas, for the last 2 Christmases at least, or Januaries, I should say, Bowie alumni, mainly the latter people like Donnie McCaslin, the Black Star people, and some of the people who were involved in Lazarus, the play that he did before he died. This is their thing. And I usually go and sing on that and it's 2 nights at the Cutting Room, and it's a kick-ass band, incredible musicians.
Ben Monders, is he in that?
No, it's Mark Platty. We had Tim Lefebvre playing bass this last time. We had Donnie McCaslin, amazing guitar player named Chris McQueen, who plays with Snarky Puppy.
I know Chris. Yeah, I had him on here. Chris.
Yeah, Chris. So I've been taking. Well, I only did one so far, but I'm going to keep going, taking lessons with him online at the moment.
He's a great player.
Trying to get him to teach me some things on guitar. He's so good. Chris McQueen. We had the drummer who was in Black Star. I can't think of his name. Catherine Russell, Everett Bradley, some singers, Jim Brogia, I think is his name. I'm terrible with people's names. I feel bad if I get them wrong and they're watching this, but please, don't take it personally. I just don't remember names really well. Sterling's so good at that. Sterling he can remember everybody's name who played on everything, and I just get it all mixed up. But
yeah, he's in like an encyclopedia.
If I see the face, I get it. I just know the face. I don't remember everybody's name. So that band, usually we do 2 nights of Bowie, and it's always sold out, and it's killer. And last year we did it, and I did Life on Mars and a bunch of stuff. But because we can't do that this year, this is why we're doing the Bowie celebration online. So it's going to be up to stream for 1 day only. So I hope people will check it out. It should be good.
It's a BowieCelebration.com. So check that out. And that should be really good. Also Gail is going to have a Patreon coming out after the first of the year. So follow her on Instagram or like her Facebook page, and she'll hip you to all that stuff when it comes out. What are you going to have? What kind of stuff are you going to have there?
I'm going to have I'm going to do a bass thing once a month, which is more, it's as much for me as for bass players. And it doesn't have to just be for bass players, but I'm calling it down the basement. That's cool. Yeah. When my mother said, "Where are you going? What are you doing?" "I'm going down the basement."
That's awesome.
Hit on my drum kit that I just made up out of a stool. So I'm going to have at least a once a month kind of online thing with bass players, and I'm going to set up my Ampeg and my bass, and I'm going to learn some bass things. And I want to learn some things from the people. I want to find a way that we can be more interactive than just me reading questions on the scroll. I don't know. We're going to figure it out.
Good.
But I'm definitely going to offer a bass thing where I talk about bass and share some insights about bass that I have. I'm going to do a song once a month. This is my secret weapon, is that I'm going to have the people who sign up for Patreon will be able to send me a message of a cover song. I'm going to name a different artist every month. And that 1 month, the people who sign up, who subscribe, will be able to send in a list of songs from that one particular artist. It might be Bowie 1 month, it might be Olivia, it might be Queen, could be anybody. I'm just going to pick some of my favorite writers or artists. And then I'm going to choose a cover song, and I'm going to record it, and it will be theirs as a download. I'm going to record my version of that song. So that's so cool. That's part of the thing, one of the things you'll get from Patreon, and there'll be a few other things too.
Awesome. So go to just make sure you follow Gail on Instagram, Gail Ann Dorsey, and Facebook, Gail Ann Dorsey Music. And Life on Mars is actually one of my favorite Bowie songs. It's great. A great song.
Indeed.
Hey, listen, I can't thank you enough for your time. You're very sweet. It was, it was great talking with you.
I'm sorry it's getting so dark.
No, please. Thank you for everything. Hang on 1 second. Let me just wrap this up. All right. Everybody, thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this, please share it on your social media channels. We appreciate your support. Thanks very much to Gail Ann Dorsey for everything. If you're not hip to her music, oh, you're welcome. It's been my honest pleasure. If you're not hip to her music or her bass playing, she's all over YouTube. She is such a badass. Check out she does a song with Bowie. I don't remember the top of my, what song is it that's real popular, the YouTube video?
Oh, it'd be Under Pressure.
Under Pressure, right. And she's just a badass bass player, and her honestly, man, listen to her record. I covered it here. I keep forgetting the title. I'm sorry.
I used to be, yeah. It's on Spotify.
It's on Spotify and Apple. It's just she's got a voice like an angel, man. And hopefully she'll be putting out more music. And most important, especially nowadays, man, remember that happiness is a choice. So choose wisely. Be nice, go play your guitar or your bass and have fun. Till next time, peace and love, everybody. I am out. Thank you for everything.
Thanks, Craig. Thank you so
welcome.
much. I appreciate it. It's been fun to meet you and speak with you.
Thank you. Likewise.